This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Red pill.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
J5 2022. Yes, sir, man. Likewise, happy Founders, brother. So, what's been going on your neck of the shot today, bro?
Oh, man. Oh.
I'm just a kid from Chicago.
Yeah. The mayor decided that, well, let's just go back a second. The school union, teachers union, decided that if the COVID ever got out of hand, got over 16%, that they would go back to the remote schooling. And the mayor has decided against that. She's threatening the school board, teachers union, that she's not going to pay them if they're not in class. She also closed the schools today and locked them out of their ability to teach remotely.
Wait a minute. She wants the school open, but she closed them?
Yeah.
All right. So you're in agreement with the school board, I'm taking it by your tone? I mean,
teachers union. Yeah,
the teachers union. I mean, what, you just don't like the mayor and you just gonna disagree with everything she does? I just want to know how you feel about it. You live there, you vote.
Well, she's tyrannical, but that's not, what I'm concerned about. It's about the children. You know what I mean? If a bunch of children are getting, if 16% of the school children are getting this from wherever they're getting it from,
but the kids don't die from it. They don't even go to the hospital.
That's true, but there are teachers that are being affected from it.
Uh-huh.
And
so you agree with the school board? I mean, with the teachers union?
Yeah, I agree with the teachers.
I mean, hey, I'm always pro teacher.
Yeah,
I always say defund 12 and refund the teachers. Don't get me wrong.
I feel like
I don't know how I feel about unions necessarily, though.
I got you there, but I would think it would be, they'd been doing it for so long already. They came back. I don't know. I know I would have learned better at home.
Well, let's ask the chat. If you guys standing with the Fraternal Order of Teachers, the FOT, or are you standing with Kermit, the mayor, the top cop, Mayor Lori Hoover? What's the mayor's name? Lori Lightblunt?
Yeah, Lightfoot, I think.
Yes, the Honorable. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I heard something about it. She came off like she was blindsided, or maybe she thought they were bluffing, or she was just going to bully them. And so now you're saying she took away their ability to teach remotely. So now we're shooting ourselves in the foot to spite our face, or whatever, chopping off our nose to spite our face. Is that what we're doing?
It sounds ignorant to me. I don't know.
Ignorant.
That's what it sounds like to me. But I'm just
man.
Just one guy.
Yeah. I mean, we're not President Fossey. You know what I mean? God. So what do we know, right?
No more than Fossey.
We're not President Fossey. Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what I'm saying? But before we jump into itself, what we got today, for those who aren't regulars, we always start our show off with the proprietary Self Love Show. We do a quote of the day, and then, of course, our Moor Growth and Development platform video. It's less than a minute. Sink your brain into that. Also, we'll run a video. Self Love and I, we react to a video coming out of the news. Typically, it deals with tattoo tyranny. And then we run a second video, which is short, and we decide if we think that that's smart way for our community, meaning Black first. We're for all people, but we're Black first since we're at the bottom. So we're going to be Black first. Anybody got a problem with that? Sit on it and twist. Yeah. All right. So that's where we do our how to move or not to move, and we'll react to that. And then we have a dome teaser. Self Love and I were big on this inside your skull, encased in your cranial area. This is a muscle. So we have a dome teaser. We feel like the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. The less you use it, the more you lose it. And then our topic, we have a guru in the building. We call him Leandrew Damas. This cat is, how do I say, Ivy educated. He's got experience working with some cats from all over the world and on the highest levels in this whole financial game. So yeah, we're excited about that. And then we have next week's sneak peek. We'll let you know what we got in store for next week's show. It's a really big show. It's a really big show. It's a really big show. And then, of course, we wrap it up with my favorite part of the whole shebang. That's where my co-host, Brother Wordsmith, he wraps the whole thing up in a metaphysical, poetic bun, I should say. He summarizes the entire show, which, through God's grace, is typically dope. But first, announcements. Self Love, you got any announcements? Nope.
Happy J5 to all the noobs worldwide, and I do mean noobs worldwide. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell. Let's get it.
Yeah, I'm going to extend that J5 wish to all the noobs and their sweethearts and the Kappa sweethearts as well. The entire family. Yeah.
Facts.
All right. Now, other announcements, you guys, Omicron, at least here in Cali, it's spreading. So, it is what it is. You guys may or may not know I'm battling COVID. Glory to God. I'm fine. So I got my antibodies building up. So anybody who wants me to breathe in their face, or who wants to breathe in my face, I should say, come on with it. Come on with it. And then, so if you're out here and you're in the fintech space, financial tech space, or in the finance world, or you've invested in some NFTs, things of this nature, we want to know about it. Put in a chat. We want to know what city you're in, things of this nature. But enough of my rambling on. I'm going to toss it over to Self Love over here so he can handle his business.
Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, share it far and wide. We have to get this information out to like minds. And frankly, we need your help. So if you could be kindly enough to share this with someone who will thoroughly enjoy it, you could help the Self Love Nation grow. As always, we have the Moor Growth and Development platform that we're building the Self Love Nation off of. A very important video I need you to check out. But as always, before that, we're going to get the Self Love Show quote of the day. Those who master money are free to serve others still mastered by it. Once again, those who master money are free to serve others still mastered by it. Orrin Woodward, an author. And we'll be right on back after you checked out this short video. Silverback Moor Growth and Development Platform. Number 1, repair our nation via reparations. We demand our silver back. Number 2, to connect our breadwinners with our activists. And 3, show an accurate depiction of African American Chi-Town. 4, to shine a light on positive influences. 5, heal our community one person at a time. 6, to provide an unfiltered platform for our influencers. 7, recycle the Black dollar. 8, to provide mentors for the mentorless. 9, to close the gap between us and our pink kinsmen.
Close the gap. Close the... Hello? Closing the gap. We're closing the gap. Get that gap closed, everyone.
Gotta get her closed.
Get her closed. Hey, bro, we have Stace Dude, my club, your club, the regular in the building from San Diego. Yo, Noob.
Yo.
Happy J5. And then we got Demon Time. Demon Time's in the building. Demon Time says, anybody with no eyebrows other than Whoopi, I just don't trust. I think they're talking about Kermit the Mayor. And then we got Jimi Hendrix, also known as Omni Overseer. Yo, Noob. Happy J5. One Love, Self Love. Demon Time said vibrate energy, I think. It's not a heart, it's a power thing. And free that love, though. Kings, almost home, 100. And then we got Omni Overseer said, yo, from Vegas. Shamari Crest said, peace to my big brother, respect and knowledge. Facts. All right. Got your little brothers in here, Self Love?
Yeah, I think you know Shamari from South Shore area.
All right, big ups. Thanks for your support, Shamari. And my regular, the co-host of tomorrow's show, Mouthpiece Included, Ace X2U is in the building. And he said, what's going on, fools? What up, fool?
What's the business?
What is the business? That is the question. But bro, last week, man, we had if you guys missed last week's show, I suggest that you check it out. Big solid ups to my brother Anthony and Hubert. Great first name, by the way. I don't have anything against his last name, but he this young man or this king, he sat and told his story and broke down a lot of things that I wouldn't have known in regards to our topic, which was prison is slavery. What say ye, Self Love?
Man, outstanding. I would recommend everyone check that out. It could be very helpful, especially for young people.
Absolutely. And he didn't give a Walt Disney breakdown of it. He wasn't about the glorification or anything of that nature. Powerful story. And again, big ups to that king, for walking that walk. We're all about lessons, not lectures. So Self Love, we could sit here and wax poetic about all types of shit. Excuse my language. We could myself. We can yap with the best of them.
Yes, we can.
But we prefer to get cats who've actually walked the walk to come on our show and then talk the talk.
Facts.
Lessons, not lectures. So you guys, please like, share, subscribe, share this link. We're talking Fintech. This is the future. You can get a lot of information. I just saw a quote from Socrates. I'm going to butcher it. But you could take this information that people have toiled and sweated to get, and you can just listen to them give you the information, or you can read what they wrote and save yourself a whole lot of trouble. So that's what we suggest here. But Self Love, yeah, did you hear we had some coloreds? Can we call black people coloreds in 2022? Coloreds?
I would.
We had some.
You can.
We had some Ivy Leagues on NBC, No Black Colored Network. But on NBC, they were talking about Black Harvard and Yale. You know, we talk defund the Ivy Leagues, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Big ups
Mariah
production.
Norman. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
So I'm Ife, my full name is Ifalua Adedoku. I'm from Queens, New York.
My name is Kimani Panthier, and I'm originally from Long Island, New York.
How do you identify?
Caribbean American.
Nigerian American.
I'm a black woman.
Schools like Harvard aren't keeping track of their black students' backgrounds, but students I've spoken with estimate
Lightest
that
one
less than
says she's
a third
black.
of Harvard's black students are generational African Americans.
I was born here, but my parents, most of their adult life was spent in Nigeria.
Generationally African American, which basically means that you're a descendant of enslaved people.
I'm the son of two immigrants who migrated here in their early adult life.
We sent a detailed list of
He like he
questions
could
to
play for the
Harvard
Bucks.
about their diversity and recruitment efforts, the proportion of black students who are descendants of enslaved people, and those whose families have more recently immigrated, as well as their efforts to address the school's connections to slavery. The school responded with a handful of web links and then declined to comment further. For its part, Harvard in 2019 launched an initiative called Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery to, quote, understand and address the enduring legacy of slavery within our university community. Is the institution doing enough to actually
Fair use.
any of the past?
Simple answer is no. They're missing out on the key part, which is, you know, admitting and seeking out and recruiting generationally African American students, specifically ones that are directly impacted by the effects of slavery. So that's redlining, underfunded public schools, over-policed communities, low-income areas. All of those are directly impacted by the effects of slavery.
In the meantime, black students from the diaspora are trying to understand where they fit on Harvard's yard.
It was just interesting to see that as I stepped here, I knew people who had come from where I came from and kind of had to conform to the culture here, but we're from Africa.
One of the major disappointments for me coming on the campus was that I imagined it to be this great melting pot, and yet it did not live up to that expectation.
In what ways?
I was expecting I would have white friends, Asian friends, Latinx friends, African friends. But when I got on campus, I found that it was quite the opposite. People stuck to their different cliques. It was just diverse on paper, but in actuality, the college is very segregated.
How much of that do you put on the institution?
I put a great deal on the institution. I think that just admitting 18% of black students into your student population is not enough.
And I think that change really can start right here, with the black students, and making more structural changes as we've all talked about, making those tangible efforts to reckon with their past could really inspire America to do the same.
That was NBC's Tremaine Lee reporting. Do check out the latest episode of Into America, hosted by Tremaine Lee. It's called Ebony and Ivy. Download and subscribe on your podcast app.
Ivy League think tanks. You can stop that production. Yeah, these Ivy League think tanks. What say you about that, Self? What's your what'd you think about what they're saying?
It's to be expected. I did expect that to be the results. I expected it to not be
Black Americans?
Yeah. Expected it to not be foundationally black people. That's what I, kind of expect. I see how immigrants are put above us, just in the door. They just walk into the country and slide right on past us.
Yeah, it's another divide and conquer mechanism in my mind. It's a way that, again, when we're not paying attention to these new laws and these things that they claim that they're doing in the foundationally Black Americans benefits, when we don't pay attention to the detail, which is where you find the devil, then these things will continue to happen over and over and over again. But at some point, we're going to move beyond begging to be at this person's table.
Facts.
And just put all of our energy in building our own.
Yes.
That's what I would like to see.
Yes. Got to build our own everything. We got to have our own infrastructure, our own police force, everything.
Our own hotels, so we don't have to deal with nonsense.
Sovereign.
Correct. Correct. But, so we don't, belabor the point. We did have a video. It's our how to move or not to move segment self. And we got Mama Do, Rats on Son.
Now an update to a story that we brought you last night. Police say they know who tried to violently rob a grandmother in St. Paul. Prosecutors charged 18-year-old Isaiah Foster with aggravated robbery and assault. He was already in jail for other crimes, but as our Jeff Wagner explains, it was a family member who turned him in.
It's no surprise this jarring video of a thief yanking Judy Stutman to the ground in order to steal her purse spread quickly.
He's a
Wednesday.
jackass.
Even she recognizes why it struck such a chord.
Hate to admit it when you hear you're elderly, but then I look at myself in that video walking and say, yes, I am elderly.
Support has been constant since our story aired.
I've had quite a few emails and a lot of phone calls.
But one call from police stands out.
I was really, really pleased to learn that they had him.
18-year-old Isaiah Foster was identified in the video by his mother. Court documents say she called police after recognizing him and his black jacket that was a gift from his grandmother.
Wow.
She preyed on it, but ultimately turned him in because she, quote, did not raise him like that.
I think it would have been the most difficult thing in the world. I am sure that the mother realizes that this might be his best chance for turning his life around. And that is my hope.
Foster had been in jail since Tuesday, arrested for a string of robberies. Police say he and two others carjacked a woman in an alley behind her St. Paul home. The mother had to quickly pull her 3-year-old child out of the SUV before it was stolen. The day before Stutman was targeted, 85-year-old Arlene Ferguson was violently robbed in the parking lot of this Aldi as she was loading groceries into her car. She too was hospitalized and has since been released. Police say the two crimes are not connected and the suspects in this case remain at large. In St. Paul, Jeff Wagner, WCCO 4 News.
The suspects in the Ferguson case used her credit card at a Target in Richfield, and that led to these surveillance photos. One shows the suspect and another the car that they were using. If you recognize either of them, you are asked to call St. Paul Police.
All right, so is that how to move? You're a parent. I'm not. So I'll leave it to you first. The parents. The mom in this instance.
Man, I would struggle with this, but you can't yank an 85-year-old down, man. You can't go around doing that, and can't do that.
What I find funny, well, not funny, but eerie. You know me. I'm always like, where are the men?
Yeah.
That our community can't corral this young man and have him turn himself in. Like I can't sit down with my son or nephew and say, go turn yourself in, do the right thing, get yourself some help. You know what I mean? You're going to get yourself killed, or worse, you're going to kill somebody out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That we have such fear, and I'm not judging the lady, of our own children that our society say, you can't put hands on, you can't discipline, and you can't spank, and you can't this and that, right?
Yeah.
And then they get 14, 15, and they got a man's body and a child's brain, right?
Right.
An adolescent brain. And then now they want somebody to be able to do something to them.
Yeah, and it's, something's got to be done before that. For the yanking 85-year-old down, like you said, the men in the area. I mean, seems like no man was present.
That's usually what it is.
Yeah.
No
someone
male role
has to
models.
say
We'll call
something.
for you when we're ready. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's we got to get our men back in homes. You know, I mean, we got to get men at least back in the neighborhood, in the area, and got to cut out this. You can't touch my baby. You can't talk to my. Don't talk to my baby. Got to get rid of that. That part got to go.
All right, and so I'm gonna say, if it comes to that, I'm gonna, I don't wish jail on nobody, but as much as I hate to say it, that I'm gonna say that's how to move at some point. If you can't call any other men to handle that in another way, you can't get this turd to turn himself in, right?
He was already in jail.
Well, but still.
It
was on another case.
To it.
Yeah, exactly. To at least
to cop
it's
to it.
Yeah, but like you said, so many other problems before it gets to that point. Nobody's talking about these people walking the street with masks or these people popping these pills. And when you start popping those pills, you get an addiction, and it's like heroin, and you need it, people. So you think you're doing the cute thing, you're popping a perk 30 or whatever, you're doing this and that, and all the cool people are doing it. Well, if you can't afford to keep that habit going, you're going to be out there sticking people up too, huh, Self?
Yeah, I mean, we gotta, and it's much closer to heroin than most people think. They think they're just popping these pills or whatever, but it's very close to heroin. The habit.
I agree. So we both agree it's how not to move. And we got our guest waiting. So let's go ahead and jump to, and in the chat, is that how to move? Are you ratting out your son or your daughter? Let us know. It's interactive. Put a Y if you're going to rat them out. Put a rat in there. You can put a rat, or you can put a Y if you're going to rat your seed out. And then, or you can put an N if you think that's how not to move, because we want to know. If it's my son, which again, I don't have any children, I'm ratting them out as much as it hurts my heart to say it. Here we go. Dome teaser, Self, the riddle du jour. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? The more you take, the more you leave behind. You got a quick thumbs up. You heard this one before?
Yep.
All right. Well, that's fair enough. This guy's the Riddler. He hears all the riddles. He knows
I had no clue that I was taking in riddles all the time. I had no idea. A lot of these I've heard. I'm like, I've heard this, but
you've been absorbing riddles, fella. All right, but let's get at it. If production can roll the start of that promo video, we have our honored guests in the building. Leandrew Wade III. So coming to us. Reduce volume, please. For your enjoyment, your infotainment, your edutainment, we're bringing my purse, Leandrew Leandrew Wade III. My man is a fintech genius. I've said before, one of the smartest, if not the smartest, men I've ever met, up to and including myself. And I don't throw that around lightly. Brilliant. King. And a bigger man. So let's get this brother in the building. And Self Love, you can handle your business once we get everything popping. And I'll just pop to the back here.
Shep.
Yo.
Welcome to the Self Luv Show. Looking forward to this conversation. I know it's going to expand the nation.
It's an honor to be here, brother.
Happy Founders to you too, on top of that.
Happy Founders Day.
Yeah, and thank you to you two scallywags for making a brother like myself. As I always say, you made meals, go ahead and make another meals, right? Hey, but let me just give a quick purpose and direction of our show. I know you know it. You're a friend of the show, Drew, and you've actually sat with us before, but not one-on-one as such. So we're not a debate format. This is your show. Our main purpose is, our big quote that we use is an African proverb, which says, until the lion learns how to write, the story will always glorify the hunter. So here we are, the lions, and we're going to memorialize our stories into perpetuity, get this information in the blockchain, and who knows, maybe our kids' or our, nephews' kids and kids' kids. Imagine if Leandrew Wade III can, sit down and watch this show. So that's what we're about, bro. For us as Black men and Black people to be able to tell our story from our own voice before it gets filtered through the warping of history. So you got anything for us before we jump into it?
Well, first of all, again, it's an honor to be here. Happy Founders Day. And, I don't know if too many people know this, but my official name is Leandrew Wade III, which you showed in the promo. And it's fascinating that and how nothing is random, I believe, in the universe, that you mention a Proverbs and the main theme or centered around a lion. Well, my name, Leandrew, actually means lion man. In fact, a great evangelist once told me that my name, Andrew, was the first apostle. He was the one that basically, or disciple of Jesus Christ, he was the one that was brothers with Peter, and they were fishermen. But he saw the Lord, he saw Yahshua, he saw the Messiah, and he went and told his brother. And these were big fishermen. I mean, we live here in, Chicago, or I'm in Chicago. I mean, Lake Michigan, this was the main headway with Chicago River and all the great engineering. I mean, when they reversed the river flow, that was a world wonder, previous turn of the century, in the age of the industrialization and rapid growth of America. But ultimately, their Sea of Galilee was like our Lake Michigan. It was a big bustling hub. And it was, they were, they probably, remember, this was the eastern frontier of the Roman Empire, which was in conflict in a Cold War with Persia and the other empires of the East. Even China was in the thing, and not to mention Nubia and others in the South, right? Plus the barbaric peoples up around by the Caspian Sea, even further north. So this was very important. They sent their best leaders, their best people in the garrison, people like, Pontius Pilate and all these other people under that reign of Julius Caesar. I mean, they ultimately were, they had to have perks. So what I'm trying to say is that, Jerusalem, it was probably lavish for these people. I mean, they had nice restaurants. I mean, Andrew and Peter and their crew of workers on those big ships were probably stocking all the top restaurants of the Romans, and the high people that time went to go see. And so he was that messenger. I mean, pulled from that great gold rush, that gold mine, and went and followed Yahshua, sure. Right? And Lee is like Leo, and Leon obviously being lion, a lion of Judah. And what's funny, through the modern day, thank you for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who want to basically baptize everybody, even if you're dead. But they had this website, familysearch.org. And when they first launched in the late 90s, because a cousin of mine had written this book on the family that made the link to those families, I was able to go back to oh my gosh, I went back to 1404 Switzerland, then 1390. And then eventually, as the website went from Web 1 to Web 2 and ultimately Web 3, we're in the internet, which is basically the internet of value, which we'll talk about later. Ultimately, the site was so optimized that I was able to trace my family back to Adam and Eve through multiple lines, including all the sons of and kings of Israel, including the line of Judah himself, David. In fact, one line said I'm even a descendant of Yahshua. and Mary Magdalene.
Well, you said a lot, and we're going to unpack it, man, and that's why you're here. They made a sacrifice. They gave up a lot of worldly wealth, if you will, to become fisher of men. And that's what Joshua told them that he is. He's a fisher of men. And that's what Self Love and I, that's what this whole show's format is about. If we could, save one man, we've saved the world, a whole universe. So let's just jump into the early part. We like to breeze through this. For those who don't know, where were you born and raised?
So the space-time coordinate was a Tuesday at, I believe it was 7:50 p.m. On February 2nd, 1971 in DeKalb County Hospital. And it was at that moment that my dad was actually attending Northern Illinois University as... Sorry?
Yo to your dad. Yo.
Yep. So he was actually the charter member and founder, as well as dean of the first line of Epsilon Omicron, coming out of Alpha Rho, which was, I heard, his was the last line, but apparently they're actually kept making more lines, but that was totally hidden. But anyways, we were out there because of my dad, and my mom was actually after she graduated, they got married, and ultimately they were in DeKalb. Because my mom is like 2 years older than my dad, although she died in 2003.
So DeKalb, Illinois, pretty much. Can you talk to us about some messaging you were receiving from your elders? Maybe they now became ancestors. Anything that you remember that stood out as a young man that you're like, man, I cherish this information?
Well, I mean, a lot of things were said to me along the way. I know that my grandmother, this is my paternal grandmother, she basically mentioned that, I need to have patience. I mean, she believed in me, and she knew that whatever I put my mind to, what I would achieve, but just to exhibit, just to basically exercise patience. So when she passed away in October 2012, it really hit home. And that's something that has really resonated in my mind. Patience.
Okay. All right. Now, when you were coming up as a child, were there any pink people? And the reason we say pink, the designation is that Self Love and I, we do everything with respect. We have many white family members and white friends. So the pink ones are the ones who aren't, who don't necessarily carry themselves with the amount of love that we would find necessary, to be one nation under God, so to speak. So did you feel safe coming up, as a young male in your community? And then were there talk about involvements with whites in your community? Were you involved? Were there any white people in your community?
Right. So ultimately, I ended up growing up in a town called Glen Ellen, which is in the heart of DuPage County. And, it's in the far west suburb of Chicago, about maybe 30 miles or so to due west. And my town, when we moved there, I think it was it was sometime during the early 1975, before my sister was born in November. We actually were on the Channel 2 or CBS affiliate station, 6 o'clock news, for about 10, 15 minutes on a special report about this Black family who had moved to Glen Ellen. Now, there had been other Blacks out there, but let's just put it this way. I was surrounded by an ocean of pink sand, so to speak. And it was a very interesting upbringing. And as far as safety, I always knew that at best I was tolerated. And in some situations, if there weren't certain forces, I probably, there could have been some, definitely mentally, I think there was a lot of that, as far as there was a lot of mental warfare that I saw all around me as a minority, an extreme minority.
Okay, but
time and space period.
But there wasn't any, street gang activity or KKK lynch mobs going up and down the street, things of this nature.
I know my mother used to talk about, she mentioned like John Birch Society and some of these other organizations. I mean, there were definitely people who were affiliated with that. Basically, it was just, I knew it was them and us. And I saw that very early on. And I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out a way to become a part of them.
Now, I know as a child, because, you guys know I went to a mixed grade school, but it was in the city of Chicago. And the younger you are, we're all in the same sandbox. We're all playing on the same monkey bars. We're all playing the same games. At what age do you remember that maybe the other kids' parents start looking at you differently, or, things felt different? Do you remember an age where things you weren't a kid anymore?
What you're saying, the question is
when you realize when you felt like, oh, I'm different, and you started being treated different. What age?
What happened for me was, when we first moved there, ironically, there were the whole block seemed like it was just full of kids. I had all these little playmates, and it was fun. We'd play, like, for example, we had enough to field an entire Star Trek landing party. And of course, they always made me Sulu, because Sulu was like the only, I guess, person of color who was a male. I mean, they couldn't make me a Uhuru because I'm a man. So these little points, I always had to be Sulu. George Takei himself lives in San Francisco or whatever. Just, hi, I'm a thespian. I had to be Sulu. And I just don't. But anyway, we had enough kids. And then all of a sudden, this is around kindergarten, right around kindergarten, people just started moving. And then all of a sudden, by the time first grade rolled around, the whole town was like a ghost town. Every single one of those households with families had moved away. I had
White flight.
What? And that's when I realized, well, how come we're not moving? So clearly, like, I'm it. And that's just what it's going to be.
All right. Let's shift gears, because we can talk about this forever, and I know time's limited. It's a limited resource. You're a finance guy, and Self Luv and I, our Moor Growth Development program, number one on our list is reparations. So I kind of wanted to ask you a question in a different way. Assume that reparations is good. Assume that reparations has been passed. How would you fund reparations? How would you go about funding such a thing?
Well, I mean, money is like blood, it's currency. And that's what transports the energy to empower a wonderful machine such as the Homo sapiens and our massively powerful brains who can basically come up with ideas of anything. Well, likewise, our financial system is our entire everything. Let's just call it nowadays, we're talking about, you hear about terms like NFTs, but which we'll talk about later, but like the metaverse, which is basically, technology is caught up where we can create literally a virtual parallel of our reality.
Yes.
And in that scenario, everything's powered by energy, like in this universe or even in that meta universe, okay? That virtual world, which really is nothing but code and algorithms, but it allows people to be in this universe, this metaverse. You ultimately have to have a transporter of that currency, of that power. And that power ultimately ties to what's being done right now, which is, at the intersection is the fintech industry, or basically revamping the entire financial or banking system. The banks are the heart valves or the hearts that pump that power that goes throughout the entire ecosystem. And one of the things that we did, if you look at, for example, how the Civil War ended, when there was total war, brothers and brothers, I'm talking about the US Civil War between 1861 and 1865, war that was not fought over, the freedom of African Americans, enslaved human beings, but it was really about, we were making, the powers that be namely the Northern industrialists, felt that we are moving, for us to progress, we cannot be a producer nation stuck with this dealing with commodities that were basically based in, human slavery, to one where we could transition to the next age, which is the industrial age, which instead of prior eons where human and animal slaves did all the work, now you can have a mechanical version of them that can do all of the work. Okay. Well, we're about to make the next great leap forward. And the whole banking system was based on that. That's where capitalism comes from. Or even if you want to go into the communist world, both have C's. It's about who's going to, what is that valve, what does that heart look like that's going to pump the energy throughout the ecosystem or that universe. Well, now we're moving to the third age. And the third age is the age of ultimately intelligent us. It is the machine age, the true machine age. And this is where you'll have self-aware, sentient beings that are perfect parallels of us, but in their own way, ultimately powering that. Well, there's going to be a new banking system for that. So what I'm saying is that now is the time, for example, in Wyoming is just like back in the day, like Delaware was known for, domicile corporations or even the banks. And then they went to South Dakota and places like that. Well, now Wyoming is going to be the leader of the new licenses and the new way of doing to interact with this metaverse. And where they're going to start, like, for example, in areas that can't touch current banking systems due to maybe they sell cannabis, or maybe they're into other things that go against the charters of the very institutions that were set in place by the current heart, which is the central bank or the Federal Reserve, that dictates how that energy is capitalized throughout our ecosystem. Well, now we're going to have the next version. And now because of where we're moving into the virtual age, we can now create there's going to be a need for a new bank. So what I'm arguing is that just like after the Civil War in the United States, there was the Freedmen's Banks. What I'm talking about is Freedmen's 2.0. And the Freedmen's Bank, even though many went belly up, still were very important for funneling cash that ultimately enabled the Black Wall Street to get up. Because after the Civil War, as you know, or during the Civil War, the way the Northern industrialists, with this notion that we are going to move from being a producer nation to a value-added nation, from the supply side to the demand side, and that true increased valuation, we are ultimately going to starve off these Southerners, these people that want to keep us producing. And they basically put naval blockades. Well, likewise, there's that system was done in regards to what killed the Black Wall Street. What killed Black Wall Street is that for one moment they actually had access to capital, where every other door was completely closed. Well, the same thing has happened now. So, but however, we're about to move into the next age. So now was the window. Right? Just like a John Baptiste de Savo, he was so smart. He was right there in the headwinds of what was one of the greatest waterway communication networks in world history. You can connect through oceans and the Mississippi and the Gulf and all these different empires into the interior. And he had the astute mind to go and establish a settlement. But look what happened. He has Lakeshore Drive named after him. Maybe a few schools versus, he could have been truly the king of Chicago. Well, when these Freedmen banks came around, they provided a channel for capital so that these Black Wall Streets can come up. Well, now we're in a point where we're moving to the new era. We could actually start to get some of those charters. And I would say that it should actually be enacted in Congress, while we still have some influence, to basically state that there will be certain institutions. So basically, imagine like a Federal Reserve, which powers all the banks. If 10% or whatever our population, it's always equated to the population of African American society. But if the Federal Reserve, and inherently, which had all the freaking licenses for doling out capital, or the blood that powers the economy, maybe it was linked to the Black population as our permanent entitled reparation, and let's say that's 12%. So imagine if we control 12% of the Federal Reserve, but of course the Federal Reserve is an exact parallel to the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is the world's biggest economy by any measures, at probably now $30 trillion. I mean, at one point I thought it was 18, not too long, like a decade ago. Now they're saying it's about 30 trillion. So $30 trillion, imagine if we had 10% of that, right? That's $3 trillion. That's 1.5 times the GDP of freaking the entire continent of Africa, which will be the United States of Africa, because that's what this is all about. Because by the end of this century, the end of the 21st century, we will see the world's population as it reaches towards 11 billion. We'll see that all the big mega centers, cities like Lagos, Kinshasa, Dar es Salaam, and all these others, approaching 100 million population each. That's where the power is going to shift. So everything's going to go from the United States of America to the United States of Africa. That's what this is all about. So an opportunity for us now is to demand in government, in Congress, that we demand the rebirth of the Freedmen's Banks 2.0, which is now going to be ultimately for this new Fed that's going to be set up, this virtual Fed that's going to be set up, because there will be a regulator. We demand at least, and you, a minimum of 10%, but it always shifts to our population. So if we get to 30%, boom, for that year, we get 30% of all the revenue that comes to the Federal Reserve in terms of access to capital. Basically means we should control at least 1/3 of the banks.
All right. Now, how is that money distributed? Is it distributed to each individual?
Well, we can't be like the other
African-American?
black people. The black people that are here that they exterminated. I mean, there are black people over there, black people over here. Coca-Cola perfectly says it, right? Coca came from the black people here. Cola came from the black people there. And they just like, and then we branded it, and then Coca-Cola. Well, my point is that what was I saying? What did you say?
Well, we were talking about funding reparations, and I was asking you. So you said, we can get up, say, 13% or 13 to 15% from the Fed, which comes to about $3 trillion by your math.
Right.
How is that money distributed to a layman like me?
That's what I was going to say. So I was bringing up the black people here.
Does it go to Lori Lightfoot and then she
what we call the
spends it?
indigenous people? So for most of them, they got a bunch of casinos. I mean, most got nothing, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't have treaties. However, except
Those
for
are
the
Native
Seminoles.
Americans.
Except I know that, but except for the Seminoles are the only United States recognized First Nations people in this continental United States that ultimately probably applies to the territories as well, who actually enacted a treaty. That's why they own the Hard Rock Casino hotel chain. So they were very successful. And of course, they were one of the 5 civilized tribes who were the descendants of ultimately the Mississippians, who were one of the greatest empires, definitely in Mesoamerica.
But
just like Aztec.
how do I get my money? Reparations.
So what I'm saying is, if we demand and have a movement to ultimately for these new charters, like for example, we can go to freaking state capital Wyoming right now, where they are actually doling out the actual licenses. Remember in the movie Casino, remember in like Godfather Part 2, the whole thing was legitimized. They went from the scrappy streets of Italy, of gutter New York, put those black people, that's what Italians were considered back then, to ultimately being out in Reno, Nevada, trying to get, because of the casino, because of Vegas, which was, they came up with the Jewish mob, because again, a banking opportunity, this is what I'm talking about, banks. They ultimately were lobbying all the, the senators and everybody on the ground, state, local, and federal, to make sure that not only they got the charter, but they ultimately had a percentage of what would become one of the greatest business commercial centers ever created, that being Las Vegas, and the entire gaming industry that parlayed off of that, right? Gotcha. I mean, which went into other entertainment sections like cable TV and things like that. So what I'm saying is, we need to do the same thing, have muster the political might. We have members in Congress, members in, somebody like Bobby Rush, who's retiring. He doesn't give a shit anymore. He's done after the, they're lining up for his position right now. Remember, he's the founder of the Illinois Black Panther Party. Yeah. We can actually go to Bobby Rush and say, I believe is in the House Ways and Means Committee. We can also talk to these other people, because they're going to make Chicago ultimately the cryptocurrency hub, right? If you listen to Congressman Bill Foster, he's probably the only PhD sitting in Congress right now, but he's definitely the only one with a high energy quantum physics degree. I mean, he ran Fermilab before this. I mean, and he's now on that, but he's also very successful. He created a unicorn, a tech company, all the lighting stuff, like you go to Millennium Park. When he was in high school, him and his brother, they launched this company, and now it's like theater control systems and all the lighting stuff. They have a monopoly on that out of Wisconsin. And then now he's in Congress, right? You talk to him, Bobby Rush, people like that. And the fact that we could go lobby and hard in Wyoming, and ultimately, or get him to lobby for us to say that we demand right now, our representation would be that all licenses going out, we get at least equal to our population, or no less than 10% of the descendants of the American slavery Holocaust. That is our 40. That is our 40 acres of the mule, and you could actually take 40 acres of the mule, and you could extrapolate what if you had gotten that in 1865, right? Even after Juneteenth, and you held on to that land that might have been wherever, and ultimately held on to 2022. That would be a very, very significant amount of money.
Facts.
So
Facts.
that right there, and then apply that to everybody. Again, it will equal to what I said. We're going to be at least 10% of the GDP of the United States, with the biggest economy in the world, which I estimate is at $30 trillion, which means that's $3 trillion. Now, at nothing least, when the United States of Africa comes together, we actually have our seat in their government as the United States of the descendants of Africans. And that will be the USAAD or whatever. The United States of America, descendants of Africans.
Hey, I love it,
Actually,
man.
the USDA.
I love
United
it.
States descendants of Africans. That will be the name of our state. That will be part of this. Right now, there's 54 states in Africa. We'll be the 55th.
Well, and I just wanted, just as a
We have
point
our
of
own currency,
information.
our own money, our own military, our own educational system. We'll have everything.
Well, just as a point of information, I know you mentioned the Seminoles had treaties. I want to say the Moors.
Yes, we need to sign a treaty.
Yeah, but I want to say the Moors had some treaties as well. Is that right, Self?
Absolutely, as well as many other tribes. But as the United States has done with most of their treaties, they didn't honor them.
Now, correct. Now, Self, we can shoot to halftime because I want this brother to get a cup of coffee. But did you have me a cup of tea? But did you have a question for him as we shoot to a short 5-minute break? This is great stuff, Drew.
As we are big on mentorship. How has mentorship played a role in your career?
Mentorship has been very empowering. One of my mentors, for example, his name is Strive Masayiwa. And when I met him, he had a small little company, a little telecom company, basically a little engineering consulting firm. And he'd go around to different African governments. And when they wanted to basically provide cellular services to their people at some point, he would come in and be like, I will help. I will be your technical engineer to help you architect this. So we get a plan to attract one of the major telecom companies and a pool of investors to bring money into your country. He was scrappy. He brought me on board. One day he flew me in. I just happened to be looking for an opportunity. And he ultimately flew me, all expenses paid, to South Africa, to Sandton, outside of Johannesburg, where the financial capital of South Africa, which is the strongest economy in Africa right now, although Nigeria is about to surpass it massively. He put me up and he gave me an opportunity. He made me head of business development. And from that moment on, he had always stayed in touch with me and helped guide me in terms of showing me where the future is. He's actually my inspiration. He's now the 8th richest person of African descent in the world. I think he's worth like maybe, in US dollar terms, about $3.5 to $4 billion. I mean, he's not Aliko Dangote, who's the richest, but he's definitely top 10. And he's somebody that, I just watch him. And the first time I met him, he walked in with a Bible in his hand. And then he started talking about Job, And what's funny is I actually was on Project Joshua. So when I left, I left my cushy Wall Street job. There was a lot of things hitting. Ultimately, I was inspired by Mos Def's Black on Both Sides album. Like literally, I'm at work.
Big ups, Mos. Big ups.
One of the biggest banks in the world. I'd see that dude, concerts and stuff. But I'm in the bank, and lured by the opportunity. The white banker told me, "Hey, work on this pitch." Because they were trying to transition the bank and move from just being a pure lender to being a true full service. Mergers and acquisitions. Equity, all the stuff that didn't take. Had more higher returns. And so one of the things was he was pitching. He was trying to pitch. He was an energy banker. I was an energy group, and he was trying to pitch some oil outfit out of Denver. And he said, "Look, you work on this and slave for me and put this presentation together, whatever. Make it super hot. I'll take you on the trip and to go meet these people." And so I'm sitting there slaving for like I don't know how many days because I had the slowest computer at that time. It was like Pentium 2 or whatever we were on. Pentium 3. I'm dating myself. And it took, every little graphical thing, it just took forever for every function I took. I mean, I worked probably 2 all-nighters, and just worked round the clock. I got the deck done, and then I didn't even get to go on the trip. I felt so jaded. It was crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So I ultimately had enough. And what's funny, when I was going through that time period, this is where BlacK and Book, the Most Def album comes from. I had bought it around Christmas, but I hadn't opened it until this time. It was like March. And so I'm out there listening to this album just over and over again, until I got to like, Mr. Nigga and all the lyrics there and mathematics.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking like, holy shit, this is like, I'm that dude, And so, and at the end, when I didn't get to go on that trip, I was just like, I did all that just for what? So eventually I just had an opportunity, long story short, to go to Africa, ultimately to the Republic of Mozambique, which I had read about growing up. In foreign policy, some of my favorite classes, when they were fighting for the liberation from their former colonial masters, being Portugal. And so I ended up getting over there, and I made friends with all the children of these people who were like the freedom fighters and liberators and like the first, fathers of their country, mothers and fathers of that country. And they happened to have a telecom license that they were just issuing, their first telecom license to bring, cellular GSM cellular service there. And ultimately, I ended up bringing one of the biggest carriers in that region, which ironically was started by the US SBC, that being MTN. And I thought, I had a memorandum of understanding, everything was great. But after 9/11, I'll never forget, like flying home from Joburg, but I'd been in Mozambique for a month. Everything was, we had this huge party. It was like something out of Miami Vice, all these big mansions and stuff. It was great. And I met, I'll never forget, like, Graça Machel. Graça Machel is Nelson Mandela's, third wife. Because Winnie was his second wife. If you saw the movie, I recently just watched the Long Walk to Freedom movie again. It came out in 2013, right after he died in December of 2013. But ultimately, I came back thinking I had this deal. It was ready to go. And then like 9/11, I'll never forget flying into JFK and seeing like one of my favorite buildings at that time, which is the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and just feeling all confident. The sun was great. And then all of a sudden, like a few days later, literally, because it was the day after, I think it was like the Caribbean Day Festival in Brooklyn, down Flatbush. My girlfriend wakes me up and says that, the World Trade Center's on fire. After that, of course, all the exchange communication networks to Africa went through something like below Hudson or Canal Street, like Lower Manhattan, New York. So I could even talk to my business partners over there for like an entire month. After that, everything changed. And my whole thing just shifted around. But Strive saw something in me, and he basically took me under his wing. And he's somebody that I hold true as a great mentor. But he's basically, and there's, I don't have my wallet on me, but there was another individual by the name of Mo Ibrahim, who, Strive did one half for Africa. Think of like that pedophile, homosexual pedophile, Cecil, who wanted to put his foot from Cape Town to Cairo, right? But ultimately, when like Zimbabwe was formerly Rhodesia, which is named after this guy, they wanted to do it by railroad and then communications network. Well, basically, Strive and Mo Ibrahim did the same thing. Strive took Southern Africa, and then and Mo Ibrahim took Northern Africa. Now, question is, where did their capital really come from? Is it neocolonialism? Was it European powers, some of the backwards?
Okay. All right, Purse. We're about to take a short break for halftime. Get you some tea. You're coughing. I'm gonna get me some more tea because I got a lot more information to bring at you. When we get into the second half, good news. What we're doing is, I know your time is limited, so we got Fintech. We just want to shoot through the Fintech. I'm gonna ask you what Fintech is, and give us some background on that, and then some predictions, bro. We need to get to that before I let you go. So take 5, and we'll be right back. And Self Love, I'm gonna throw it to you.
Yes, y'all. Don't stop. We are the Self Love Show on a very special day, J5 for us.
Yo.
Our founders with my ship, Leandrew Wade III, Fintech Guru, Leandrew Damas. Got a few videos I want you to check out. Help expand some things that's going on. And we'll be right back at you.
Yeah, we're going to pluck his brain. We're going to pluck his brain out. Yeah.
What are you looking at, slave?
Silence is violence, and evil's greatest ally. Those who turn a blind eye act like they don't know why. Say the police will not use such behavior. If you white, you right and have favor. But if you black, bodies pile high. Sight unseen, right in front of your face on the video screen, know what I mean? Popo lie. Fear for their life from an unarmed man. I guess he felt melanin was his weapon. They kill.
Nigga, get your hand out my pocket.
Get no charges and go free. So we need to be on our P's and Q's. Don't play no fool. The rules ain't fair. Life ain't no crystal stair. So we best prepare. Our little people, if you see something, say something.
12.
Show the world we do care. So beware. Silence is violence. Get you a trip to the devil's lair.
Self love, you done did it again, Luke. You a genius. What are you looking at, slave?
Big ups, Prince Jamar. Big ups. Appreciate your support, young man. We come to get our check.
Do you still have them?
$3 trillion.
Man, I thank you guys for inviting me on. Thank you. Great format, very solid. You know, it don't have that low budget movie feel. You know what I'm saying? And we get that a lot in the Black community, for real.
Yeah.
Like people look at us to be fuck ups. They look at us to be low budget. They look at us to be ignorant, stuttering, and use a whole bunch of and all of that. But no, they got the real deal on here. That everybody know who Torian Mills is, baby. They know.
Hey, well, bro.
They're so ignorant.
Ignorant.
They're so
Hey, but this platform's your platform. This platform's my platform. From Inglewood, California to Chicago,
South Shore.
Crazy thing about it.
This platform is
made for you and me.
It's made for you.
The crazy and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. I was trying to get out the end of the preamble, but go ahead, bro.
Yes, sir. We're back. Yes, sir. It's my joint here, Trey. Welcome back to the Self Luv Show, where today, J5, our Founders Day, we're sitting down with my ship, Fintech guru Leandrew Wade III, and it's been expansive conversation, and it's going to get more expansive now. It's going to be a great conversation.
Hey, I second that notion and emotion. We're about to run through some fintech real quick with this good brother right here. And Nuke, Leandrew Damas, was there anything that you want to big up or anything you're promoting, or you want to keep pushing forward?
Well, one of the things I do want to promote, although I can't really name it by name or brand, but I'm currently building a new product that will be a key part in revolutionizing modern finance. Think of it something akin to how the mutual fund basically financed the big leap, particularly the 1996, the 90s with the 96 Telecom Act and all the deregulation of the industry, where all this massive capital was needed to build out the internet because the Cold War was over. And they needed to bring in not just institutions, but they needed mom and pops and retail and everyday investors who, there were no day traders before that to ultimately invest, because at that time technology had, the computer age had moved forward. So financial services, was being more democratized. Well, now we're at that point right now, the same thing with the democratization of finance. So, there's a real opportunity to, so basically fintech, I want to get into fintech. Fintech is basically the brain power, the intersection of the two brains that control the current affairs, namely Wall Street and Silicon Valley. And so Silicon Valley representing tech or technology and Wall Street representing financial, right?
Okay.
They come together, kind of like Promontory Point, connecting the East-West railroads and ultimately the continental United States of America.
Okay.
So that's what fintech is, and it's bringing that capital together for this next leap in the computer age, as I articulated before. So fintech is one of those really important areas that most people don't think about, but effectively all has to do with the very exchange of all goods and services, or things as conveniently packaged as what we call money or currency.
All right. So I appreciate you breaking down fintech, because I was wondering where that term actually came from. So if I said, when did it start? I guess that's a labored question.
It basically, what we would consider the current iteration would signal Web3 just got signaled, but really Web3 really began when that white paper written by the anonymous Sako Nakamoto.
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
that's what I was going to ask you. What's his name, Self?
I'm sorry.
It's the Bitcoin founder.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Right.
Yes.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Is that Elon Musk?
Basically,
Go ahead,
one month after the financial crash, right? When all the banks went belly up and had to get bailed out by the United States government, right? And the Federal Reserve. I mean, they actually had to go and take gold, right? Our whole financial system was about to collapse. A month later, this white paper comes out by Satoshi Nakamoto, which articulated a new money system. That being Bitcoin, spelled with a capital B. Well, ultimately, that's what ushered in what we would call the Web3, or sometimes known as the Internet of Value or the Internet of Ownership, where truly everything in our economy will be decentralized from being where everything is in centers to ultimately being in the power of the people. And so that's when it really got signaled, which was, that was 24 years ago? I mean, I'm sorry, 14 years ago, right? 2008 was 14 years ago. And
who do you think that is? You have any theories?
My personal feeling, I mean, if you saw like what was that, Ultrathon or what's that, the Marvel character? Or basically the sentient being, the AI, manifests into actual superhero character. You've seen in later films. I forget his name, but anyway, you could say that maybe it just came together like the Big Bang, like poof, out of the old, this big meteor just destroyed the Earth, and then all of a sudden, out of the dinosaurs, out of the ashes, was rebirthed this new phoenix, and that being Bitcoin. Maybe there was a whole bunch of error terms. Maybe all the banks around the world, there was an error term, and that error term combined somehow through quantum physics or whatever, some math and science we don't know about, and birthed this new financial system led by Bitcoin.
Okay.
I don't know, but I personally think it was probably a consortium of very powerful people.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And what I think is it's all perfectly timed, because if you go back to the last Great War, after Berlin had been captured in 1944, and I think it was June or July of June of 1944, at the Bretton Woods Hotel in, I believe it was New Hampshire, all the central bankers and finance people that were going to rebuild the next world or this next era once, not the threat of Nazi Germany and the Third Reich had collapsed, because he was planning to build an empire that was going to last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they had this conference where they were going to come up with what would ultimately become the one world currency. And that's when, at the moment, they ultimately decided to make, in one swoop, they made at that conference, they named this one world currency. And the rumor is that there was a big party, because a lot of them were debauchery, they were all drunk. In the middle of the night, people literally changed the documents that were being agreed upon and changed it from this one world currency, whatever that name was, to ultimately the United States dollars. And after that, that basically ushered in what became the 1950s and all the growth that ultimately led to the greatest economy in the world, which is the United States of America. They made that the de facto world, economic leader, and ultimately its currency is literally as good as gold. So they basically said all other currencies, I don't care if it's backed by the German mark, whatever, backed by real gold and bullion and other things like that, oil reserve, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the United States government is the authority. And then in one final swoop, and they decided to make it official. Basically 30 years later, in 1973, they had the same hotel, I believe it was 73. Around the same time, they convened and they decided to basically usher in the era of the fiat currency, which means they took away the gold-backed standard that had ultimately provided confidence in currencies. And because currencies are basically a good, they're basically debt instruments.
Yeah.
Right. And so an IOU. And so when they did that, now effectively The U.S. dollar is now, everything's priced in all currency. You want to buy a barrel of oil, you want to go make any kind of payment, all goods and services, the merchants of the world rally around the United States government, which also is used to get loans and ultimately even to collateralize or even to guarantee other loans. It's all based on the United States dollar. And now, with all that immense power, that era is no longer needed. We're about to move into the machine age, which is Web3, which I believe was ushered in by that white paper in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto, which we call Bitcoin. And so now we're in the age of the internet of value, where the true virtual world will take place, where it's now truly things like, you've heard terms like blockchains, but ultimately with the cryptography technology behind cryptocurrency. And right now they're trying to serve the massive energy waste it is to come with that kind of computing process to create the hash that ultimately is, the unbreakable code, right? But now that which are these strong chains, stronger than any bridge or power or anything that man has ever created, they're going to figure out a way through other technology, probably with quantum computing coming online and fusion technology behind that, unlimited power. They're going to be able to, the speed of thought, create the encryption nature, which is this strong power. I'm a big sci-fi fan, but like in Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, where they went back into 20th century America in San Francisco, they ultimately needed to create a casing to bring back the whale. That's in the conversation. But ultimately, the guy literally went to the steel manufacturer, and he, on his code, this was Scotty, the engineer, and he ultimately, managed warp coils and everything. That kind of power of the 24th century, he basically gave the algorithm the formula to create what effectively is, translucent steel. Well, likewise, this blockchain, this era that we're in, is that same, like it's stronger than diamonds, So now with that, plus the massive power of AI coming online, we're going to have an entirely new financial system. And that is the era that we're in right now, which is why I think, again, going back to the question before, there's opportunity for reparations, if anybody's actually listening to me.
Well, let me ask you this then. There's been a lot of talk. You did address my question. I was going to ask, why is blockchain essential, for NFTs to exist?
Why are highways essential? Why is gravity essential? Why is, the beat of your heart and that cadence essential? It's power. Okay. Here and there, like in the book of Daniel at the very end, in the last days, knowledge will be greatly increased and people will travel to and fro the earth. That means in all directions, quantumly, cosmically, everywhere. Well, there's infinite dimensions, infinite metaverses.
Well, who is regulating? Because you mentioned, so if Facebook changed its name to Meta, so who's regulating this, and is regulation good? Big ups to the regulators.
So the Federal Reserve is ultimately the regulator, the ultimate regulator. I mean, they could go in and just cause you to, make banking illegal for you to use. Just cut you off, just blockade you immediately. The Fed has that kind of power. However, that's in a world which is physical. Of all prior eras, we're now moving into the virtual age where things, you can't touch it, see it. It's not physical.
Yeah.
It's kind of like right now. So I'm a product manager at a fintech company. What we do is we're a payment rails, like railroad payment rails, right? So providing the railroads for moving money, right? Think about us like the Pony Express. We're the payment rails infrastructure service provider. So basically all I do is I manipulate APIs as a product manager for whatever that particular rails is. Is it a cash rail? And I'm not talking about physical cash, but I'm talking about cryptocurrency cash. People want to go from this company to that company in terms of, I want to buy Bitcoin or I want to sell some Ethereum, right? We have that channel. We provide the pipes for that. It could be like a bank that wants to, ultimately digitize its infrastructure because it's outdated. They have computer systems from the 1980s. Now we can give them the best of breed computer system for moving some of their other rails, particularly those related to what we call Irish, which is indemnity rails, issuances, and and settlements, right? So like within the ACH, that can be a pull transfer where people could instantly, you want to get paid directly, without like on a paperless basis. So we're now moving to this virtual world, and the point is that the great leap. So there's a huge arbitrage where, well, again, remember I said fintech. You got financial, you got Wall Street, Jamie Dimon, and I forget who's. I'm sorry, David Solomon. I interviewed for the guy. He gave me my offer for Bear Stearns when he was there, but he's now the CEO who moonlights as a electronic dance top billboard DJ. So he's always doing these big rage parties. But he's the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Okay, and Goldman Sachs, right? Ultimately, they were gold dealers, right? Like, Lehman, they were cotton dealers, right? I mean, these were all merchants from, they were basically all agents of the Rothschilds and people like that. But, which probably goes all the way back to even other entities. But the point is that they're over here being, Wall Street, right? And again, they had just licked their wounds from being those are the survivors. The other dinosaurs died. Yeah. So now these people are like, maybe they were mammals that were during the, when their dinosaurs running around, right? But most modern, mammals, particularly those high-brained Homo sapiens and other species, right, were not around when dinosaurs are here. So yes, you can't, but you come from that. So you're a caveman. Versus now the people out in Silicon Valley, they're hanging out on Burning Man. I don't even speak regular English because I'm straight off the boat from India, but I'm running, I run Microsoft, I run Google, right? So ultimately, everything is just shifted. Like, we don't care about what you did over there on Wall Street and the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. We can do our own little crowd fund. We're in the computer world. I can just instantly send Mark Andreessen. This is why I really know, my classmate who I've never met yet. Right, I'm class of '93 from University of Illinois, and Mark Andreessen. We're both undergrads. While I'm graduating to go work at a bank, he ultimately graduates, and because he had this project called Mosaic, which ultimately became the first graphical user interface to basically allow you to more easily navigate the web, which was kind of complicated because it was geared toward people with either you had to be a PhD or clearance. It was very complicated to one that's all friendly. And so that ultimately became, when he graduated, I went out to work for a bank, big, one of the respected lending groups, Steve Wimbush was over there from Beta. But ultimately, what became Netscape. When Netscape launched in '93, right, which was basically the U of I project, which they messed up, and he just took this project, just copied and pasted, and then they rebranded it as Netscape. That became the first leader in what became the internet browser. But ultimately, when it went public, so the dot-com basically started in '95, which when it went public, did its IPO. And that ultimately is what is the beginning of Web 1. Well, then you go Web 2, the Facebooks. Now we're in Web 3. So now Mark Andreessen's all grown up. He's now, all the billions he made off of internet. Yes, Microsoft came in with Internet Explorer, but he made he made a lot of money, several $100 million. At that time was a lot of money. The Jeff Bezos, the Google boy, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, they were still in school in many cases, or getting their stuff going. He ultimately had exited, and then what did he do? He ended up launching with Ben Horowitz, Andreessen Horowitz, and ultimately got in and started investing in all the startups that became Web 2, the Facebooks of the world, the YouTubes, all those things that were these very platforms, which is basically social media. Now it's not just one directional from centralization of like, I'm the king and I put out a decree in Web 1 to ultimately you and I now the townspeople can actually have communications with each other. We could possibly even form a union. Now we're in Web 3. He now just announces that he's going to invest in all these crypto startups. So I now know that the Web 3 revolution, which is now about being able to send ownership, full decentralization to the people, has now just been launched.
Okay, so who is regulating it?
My point is that you can't, sure they can write laws, but it's the virtual world and the machines are coming. It's basically going to be like an unregulated environment. It's going to be like the national, like for example, I have a Series 3 and Series 30, commodity brokerage, right? Which is issued by the National Futures Association, which is just a regular old nonprofit association. However, it acts on behalf of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is the main regulator, right, for the futures industry, basically commodities, the supply side, all the inputs of, everything from energy to, energy for your mechanical machines like oil or gas to heat it, or the actual grain to feed your actual, human slaves like the animal and the food supply, to actually even more, currencies. And so all those commodities which power the input for any company. Then on the value added side, right, you have the race of stock market. So the CFTC, because there's how can you just, what's a commodity? Coffee bean is a coffee bean is a coffee bean. Yeah, Starbucks can go around and put a mark that's like some drug dealers like, see that mark? See the freaking siren and everything? That's Starbucks. It's better.
Right.
But it came from the same farm. In fact, I sold both. So how come my one, Starbucks gives me 2 pennies? The other ones give me 1 every 3 days. So like, I love Starbucks. But ultimately, how can you keep track? So likewise, with all these contracts that represent that commodity, is so many brokers. You can't manage it. So what they do, they don't have the resources. They're going to get tax dollars every year going to Congress to regulate, send policemen to watch all these transactions because they're trading every day. I'm the chocolate maker, I'm short cocoa. I need to go long on some cocoa beans, my main supplier, before Hershey's gets it, because I'm M&M Mars and I need to get my stuff, right? You can't regulate all that. It's because it's like a commodity. It's not like, oh, this is stock. This is like, Coca-Cola shares. So the SEC directly regulates things with stocks and bonds and those types of transactions. But the things who are the derivatives, particularly the futures, which are contracts on the commodity themselves, they can't regulate. So they have the NFA. But of course, it's all stated. You get these memos. We're self-policing, and if you hear of anything, let us know. And so of course, it's no regulation. It's like, let the prisoners run the whole damn prison. We'll keep them inside. Or shit, we might even open the gates, but we got.
So why is no regulation good?
So you get the point that they can put all the regulation you want, but you're not going to be able to regulate. So there's going to be an environment where people just. But
one of the benefits of,
because it's about the pursuit of happiness, it's about pure freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go on all the things, everything for the survival of the fittest, well, sure, maybe only the fittest are going to win. You see Walking Dead. I mean, you see who the survivors are. I mean, everybody, all walks and shapes and sizes did not make it. But the ones that did, who might be the ones, it's like Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece, where ultimately a little hobbit, Frodo, ultimately basically, saves the world and throws that one ring to rule them all into Mount Doom, and ends Sauron's wrath, right?
I'm following you. And I was reading that stuff back in grade school. I'm following you the best my mind can. I want to ask you this, though. Let's just shift over to Meta real quick.
Right.
And what Facebook has done. Well, I don't even want to call them Facebook anymore because that's old hat. So with the Meta, there was a lot of discussion amongst myself and some brothers about investment potential. It's my understanding they're selling like digital property. For instance,
what I want to plug.
We could buy the national headquarters at Philadelphia. So talk to me. Is that viable, and how am I protected? How do I know they won't just Bernie Madoff with my money?
Well, that's the beauty of blockchain. There's always an actual trace of the money.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually see that particular block on the chain.
Got you.
And all eyes can see. It's kind of like, imagine if there was, a priceless piece like the Mona Lisa. And ultimately somebody set up a Instagram page live where you could ultimately go and literally all eyes are, it has 100 million viewers could actually watch the Mona Lisa and record it, not to mention their devices and everything. Like, are you going to be how could anybody possibly steal the Mona Lisa? All eyes in the world effectively are watching it. That's what blockchain is like. Gotcha. So given that, it's a situation where, and you asked me to plug something, but I should have been plugging the GBAA, which needs to have an entity for what I've articulated. I've given to the good brother Renard Hall. He's told me not to mention a very specific idea, but ultimately I articulated a plan for a company that we actually wanted to have funded by February 8th beta charter day. And ultimately, this will allow us to not only invest, to trade and to hold, to trade, but ultimately to create and even advise of the creation of cryptocurrencies, NFTs, stable coins, any kind of digital assets, all the way to, ultimate metaverses.
Okay.
And ultimately, we're going to put this money, it's a minimum $500, but let's say, like Renard, he committed to $5,000. We put into this thing and we start making these investments. First thing is just to invest in a couple coins, a couple cryptos, a couple NFTs, and have everybody now watching this. But of course, we'll do it through crypto. So ultimately, everybody's money will be converted, and ultimately we're going to create, this will be the beta exchange, because ultimately this is going to be the first diamond of what I'm articulated earlier, which is going to be this bank, which we're going to go lobby and ultimately be the one that's going to dole out the licenses for ultimately what's going to be 10% of the of what will be the revenue from the new banks for this new financial system that the fintech players are coming up with. So we have a document, a one-page summary on that. Brother Tucci has a copy of it. Renard has a copy of it, and JB has a copy of it. And we're ready to get going. So ultimately, we'll incorporate February 8th. Maybe this should be called a Beta Exchange, Beta Exchange Inc. And it'll be a Wyoming domiciled company. We're going to get an office space and address right next to the legislative office. All we got to do is hire a lawyer. We got Nesbitt. He's right over there across the border in Colorado. Everybody's going back and forth to get licenses anyway to Wyoming. And we could have Beta Coin.
We could have Beta Coin.
Well, that'll just be the beta.
Yeah.
It'll be fully Beta Coin, but people just call it the beta, and that'll be our actual coin.
Yeah.
No, that will be our currency, and it'll be as strong as. In fact, our charter will be basically. I one time took the articles of the Declaration of Confederation of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Right. It's the Declaration of Independence of the Confederate States of America. I took that document and I literally just replaced it, a fine search for Confederate States of America. Actually, I looked for America. I think it came up a few times, and I replaced America with Africa. And then I read the whole document, and it was very, very articulated, and I get what they wanted. That will be our charter.
Created by the Moors, that document you're talking about.
And we will insert Beta, okay, as the founding fathers. It'll be, if some of our names will be in this chart. We will sign this document. That will be the charter for what will be called Beta Exchange. And it'll be a Wyoming domiciled company. We'll get presence, including our own in-house lawyer, and we will apply pressure to ultimately be the ones that's going
we're gonna table that for offline discussion.
Out there.
Yeah, great idea.
Offline. Enough.
We're gonna table that until after it's launched.
Because just like credit cards became capitalized out of Delaware and South Dakota, Wyoming's going to be the main.
We got you.
You said that.
So that'll be.
That's why I sent you that link on Power. Do you see that app that he had? That clip?
Yeah.
Wasn't that brilliant? Imagine being like my company I work for, I'm a product manager. Those are called integrators. So we power like Binance USA, not the whole Binance, but Binance USA. When anybody wants to exchange fiat currency from into cryptocurrencies, they have to go with our current banks that we have and ultimately do that exchange through us. We provide that whole infrastructure, right? Well, likewise, some of the exchange, and then companies like that have relationships with companies like, that could be the payment system, like the merchant processor or the merchant terminal. Like merchants for like the thing that was in the app and Power.
Well, let's shift gears so we don't give away all the secret sauce right here. But brilliant, that's why you're here, man. You got a brilliant mind.
This is bigger than what Bob Johnson did. Mark 25 years before I was Mark, when he created, he saw that, the cable, you need that bandwidth. That will be the main transporter of data. Right? Think about all data is through the cable wires. And I was a banker in New York. I mean, I was in the telecom group, telecom media and technology group, and I was right through those transactions. That's why I left and went to Africa as well, because I saw that, working on big deals like the Global Crossing and others, where they're taking, this is before the Amazons of the world were taking their excess capacity of the infrastructure they built out, right? But being able to dole it out to give power to others. I saw that.
Well, let me ask you a question.
So Bob Johnson knew what he was looking at, like the cable. That was smart to get into that, but he didn't think, well, but why didn't you try to get a bank? I'm talking about the bank.
We got you. Let me ask you though. Let's shift gears a bit, bro. Because you're talking about investments, and that's where we are. And just moreover, more broader than just Noops or Beta Noops. As a Black community, where should we be putting our money? What are the risks and rewards associated with this fintech segment? So, if you were advising the Black community, would you say the Beta group? I mean, talk to me. Where should we take our money and put it?
So ultimately, there's a term a lot of times people try to achieve, like in venture investing. You know, when I think about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. So Web 1, up until that time, VCs, it was like gambling. If they got a 10x return, so if they put in, you know, here's, you know, let's say that Netscape company, they put in, you know, $10 million and ultimately it goes up 10x and they had, you know, 50% control of the company, and it goes from their $10 million investment ultimately funds a company that ultimately gets to, you know, 10x versus $100 million in valuation. Because when they put the 10 million, they gave the company a $10 million valuation. Let's say it gave it a $20 million valuation. No, $10 million. They put $5 million, but it gave it a $10 million valuation. And then you get the 10x return. That's a $100 million valuation of the company, right? Well, then if you split the money, right? They got 50% they had 50% of the equity, right? Because they put 5 million and made the company. Now the assets are always equal to debt and equity, but there is no debt. So ultimately the other people are the founders get 50%. Ultimately that they split the, you know, the company, the investment they put 5 million in, half of $100 million is 50. So they made $45 million. So 45 divided by 5 is right. That's, you know, a 10x investment, but ultimately return, you know, 9x, which is ultimately, you know, a huge. I mean, that's basically 900% return versus 1,000% return. Well, then when Web 2 came around, it ultimately became, you know, we want to get 100x. So that's when companies like Facebook got funded, you know, like Peter Thiel for like $500,000. And ultimately when they went public for like, I don't even remember the number, but let's just say it was
a couple billion, I think.
50 billion, 50 billion, right? So 500,000 times, what is 100 is how much? 500,000 is 5 million. What is that? 50 million?
Yeah, 100x of 500,000 is 50 million. Yeah.
Right. 50 million, but it was all these other layers of capital. I mean, he made a massive return. I think it was more than that. Well, now we're in an era where with Web 3 or the internet of value, people are looking for the 1,000x returns. I think you'll see 100,000x return. So that means you put $1 into something, put $1 in the slot machine, right? Put $1 in Beta Exchange Inc. with this Beta coin or the Beta, you put in $1, and that ultimately is going to be part of a company that your dollar is going to ultimately be $100,000. $1, now you have $100,000. Now $100,000 is enough for any down payment on any home, and in some cases you got pay off the mortgage for your home. That's a real opportunity for our community, and that's just one simple point, which is to ultimately recognize, hey, you know, all the tools that I already use, you know, for my everyday life, you know, to bring good things to life, from the light bulb to the revolutions in food to, you know, the very social media applications that I utilize like Facebook, Instagram, and others. I mean, they're all backed or supported by these companies that had those kind of returns in the past, proven. Well, this next era, it's going to be many, many times bigger than that. So ultimately, here's an opportunity for massive, not only generational wealth to take place, but ultimately, and it's actually being done. Andreessen Horowitz actually launched a fund. It's like the Diverse Fund or something. A new Chris Lyons, who lives in Miami, he's actually the general partner. It's his fund. And all they're doing is going to all the big titans of Hollywood, Black Hollywood and sports and music, all the top people, you know, you're a top hip hop person, you're Will Smith or whoever, and now you can get to co-invest in all the startups that Andreessen Horowitz invests in, which now have gone from 10x of the 90s to, you know, Web 1 is 10x, Web 2 is 100x, and now we're talking, you know, right now 1,000, but I think it'll be 100,000x in some cases. They're going to be the first trillionaires that are probably in somebody's dorm room or high school classroom, virtual class at that, who's sitting in there who's going to create this company that's going to have a $10 trillion value, and they're going to be worth like, a couple $1 trillion. Unfathomable returns. Here's an opportunity for us.
Well, that's well stated. And I know there's a thing in the old neighborhood. They called it big bank take little bank. You mentioned the Fed and the World Bank. You mentioned the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Maybe you didn't mention the Rothschilds. You mentioned one of them.
Those black people I just mentioned.
Yeah, but stay with me here. Stay with me. Stay with me. We're talking about.
They're going to be the black Rothschilds.
Right. So we're talking about these 13 families. So stay with me on this question.
Right. Obviously, Jay-Z, Beyonce are one of them.
Bear with me.
Like the original colony.
Hold on, Noop. I have a question.
Like Battlestar Galactica.
Hold on, Noop. I have a question.
The 13 colonies.
I have a question.
Interesting.
I have a question. What is the World Bank? What are these 13 families going to do while all of this new money is being produced out of anywhere? Are they going to sit idly by in your mind and allow this, or are they somehow controlling the whole thing and getting richer than the trillions? That's my question.
Of course, it's all about bloodlines, because ultimately in this physical world, right, God is love. And he breathed life into us, which is he breathed that blood into us, right? That's why you need the shedding of blood and the covenant and the sacrifice, right? Blood sacrifice. Ultimately, they're pouring their bloodlines into these new families. So the people like the Jay-Z's and, they're intermarrying into those families. I mean, it's not just like, Meghan Markle with, Prince Harry, whatever, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, right? How ironic. I'm actually a descendant of the Sussex thing. I'm a descendant of every king and queen that ruled pretty much around the world, but definitely Europe and actually all of the royal families around the world. I had carry their blood, and it's like they always put it out there, so they always can name claim. It's just like even like all the leaders of the white minority, but in power apartheid government. Everybody from P.W. Botha to Clerk, all of them. Every one of those people were all descendants from this one Bantu woman, a Bush woman, right? So that they all say, "Oh, we're African, but we are truly African." Just like Robert E. Lee and Martha, who's cousin with Martha Washington. I'm serious. George Washington's wife, Mary Custis, right? They were ultimately the Lee family, right, which was the most wealthy of Virginia. They're all direct descendants of Pocahontas, the black people here. I mean, they're in fact, it was so crazy that by the night, they thought it was a badge of honor, but by the 1920s, when Woodrow Wilson was a Klansman, basically empowered the Klan, they basically had to rewrite the charter in Virginia to basically say, the Jim Crow did not apply was to everybody, a person of color, of one drop, except for those who were the descendants of Pocahontas. That's just the irony of it all. But blood is so powerful, so they're always going to have their blood bank, that energy in these next, and then they live immortality. They live into immortality effectively by always going into the next generation and keeping that order of 13 families.
So if I'm following you, it's I might say, oh man, Gates came out of nowhere, but then if I went through the bloodlines, you'll find out that Obama is related to these people and Gates is related to these people. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right. Just like thank you to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who ironically, I have a distant cousin who, ended up being the head of all the temples, Kelker to the Swiss lines. I mean, basically the Amish are basically, they're all Calvinist refugees. Many of the Huguenots, the South Africa, around the world, that I forget the treaty of ended of the 80s and 30 Years' War. But ultimately, this big power struggle between the Catholic Church and those breaking away from the power of the Catholic Church. And they all fled, became refugees. But that line, one of them came into my family line. But through their meticulous research, as I mentioned, I was able to go online and look at my bloodline and it's fascinating.
I've had a revelation, Noop, just part of through this conversation and just through previous meditations. I've always said, the best
good
pets
could come out of Galilee. Like, can anything good come out of Nazareth?
I've always said, brother, that the best pets, so we'll groom these pedigreed animals, right? dogs, for instance, and they have this high pedigree and we want to keep that bloodline, but then they get sick and they all die. And I know that these 13 families have realized the error of their ways. That's why some of us who are at the bottom, so to speak, are so brilliant, because it's the exchange of the DNA information.
I already put out a strategy of reparations in one swoop. It's very simple. All you got to do is open a UPS store address and incorporate for whatever it is, probably like $50 in a place like Wyoming, and go and get all the certifications. Go down the minority supplier, become a woman, WBE, MB, veterans owned, be at the top of the pile. Get a lawyer there every day knocking on the door and get a freaking charter. And ultimately, the point be like being Madden being the black guy that got to be at the meeting when they came up with McDonald's and they're handing out franchisees. I just want Africa. Can I have Africa?
Yeah.
Give the nigga what he wants. Not realizing that by 2100, half the world's population is in Africa. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So ultimately, we can do that like right now.
Absolutely, bro.
Somebody get a condo in Wyoming. What's the town? Actually, Jackson. You know what? We could be in Jackson Hole, which is super, super rich. A lot of celebrities hang out. You could perform. Get a house out there. The beta house. That'll be our frat house. And we go to Jackson Hole. It's freaking how funny. My favorite song, what's that? Souls of Mischief. Doom, 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 doom. Talking about the tours. What's the name of that? Tour stories, swimming in Jackson Hole. That's the hottest spot. My classmate, Richard Fertig, is like the world's Airbnb expert now. I saw him revamp in one night, and he's in Jackson Hole. We can set up shop, get a house, get a coop, get a fixer-upper in Jackson Hole, boom, 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 in corporate Wyoming, and people would be flying in and out
and make it happen.
Jackson Hole, chilling.
Let's do it. Now,
you want to do that? Cannon's down for that. Cannon actually put
let's do it. Hey, yo to the cannonball. Let's have this. Let's do it. Let's do it. Enough said. It's going.
And then we'll launch this thing. This will become the Federal Reserve for
enough said. Nope. Enough said. All right, check it out. We're gonna hit this final segment real quick. These are esoteric questions, bro. Yes, no, or pass. Yes, no, or pass. Has human ever walked on the moon?
Yes.
Yes, no, or pass. Have you ever seen an unidentified flying object?
Yes.
Yes, no, or pass. Is human alone in the universe?
No.
Yes, no, or pass. Is there a God?
Yes.
Okay, here's a yes, no question. Self Love, your ship, has a magic box. Now, suppose the person whom you can't fathom living without became terminally ill with a rare blood disease. Now, what if Self Love, your ship, provided you with a magic box? On that box, there's a button on the top. Self Love, your ship, my club says, if you push this button, ship, your loved one will be totally healed. However, by pushing a button, an innocent person whom you do not know will certainly die. Do you push the button? Yes, no, or pass?
Well, living in the current era, it's always you'll be your significant other, your loved one.
Whoever it is.
Yes.
Whoever it is.
Yes.
Whoever you can't live without.
Yes.
Do you push the button? All right.
Yes.
Recommend a book to the Self Love Nation.
Can it be a number of books or just?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I specifically love the late Dave. I'm sorry. What's his name? What's his name? Samuel Huntington's The Clash of Civilization, The Remaking of World Order. It started off as a 1993 New York Times article that came shortly after the first World Trade Center bombing of the World Trade Center in 93. And then in 95, he published the first edition for what this book became. It was actually in New York City that I was one day leaving my banking job, and I was at the library right off of Park Avenue, and I just saw it. It caught my attention. Well, I started reading it, and what was interesting was, I read pieces of whatever, and basically it's like a post-war book period. If you think about the 90s, the fall of the Soviet Union. So he basically said that the world was going to move into where you basically have the big civilization orders, mainly, the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I'll tell you later. But ultimately, the men of the East, the Asians, East Asians, the European powers or the Western powers, and the Arab world, ruled by Islam, right? So basically, Buddha, Jesus, and ultimately,
Abraham.
But they wouldn't say that. They're basically saying Allah.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And the book talks about that they'll be controlling their hegemonic order, kind of like the world will probably go back to how it always was. You're in prison, the black take care of the black. They dictate punishments and all kinds of stuff to their own. You don't go, and even if you don't go to the other tribe's person, you go to your own.
Correct.
But what was interesting, one day I happened to read, and I was reading chapter 10, and then chapter 3 said, well, I talked about, basically it'll be in an era where it'll be civilizational world. Basically, it will be fault line wars where, there'll be, the only place where we'd have real hot battles would be like where maybe these two giant orders, these two tribes come together, like an earthquake. Yeah, they'll have to deal with it. But the major powers and civilizations will never war at each other. So in other words, there's no World War III. However, in chapter 10, he says, but suppose this scenario doesn't happen, what would a scenario happen if there truly was effectively World War III? And he goes into very specific detail what triggers those thoughts, which is why I always know that's going to start because of the South China Sea, because there's energy power, and the Chinese want that shit, right? So the South China Sea, ultimately, the Chinese somehow, they're getting territory, and they go into their big nemesis, who's Vietnam, and they clash, and a war jumps off. That triggers off all kinds of treaties and stuff, just like World War I. And then from there, effectively, the U.S. finally the big powers are in it, like the United States, all these big companies are in it, and because they're part of these treaties and shit, right? I mean, if China decides we take Taiwan, or troops start moving from freaking North Korea to South Korea, where there is no treaty in place, shit just happens. There's automatically like protocols in the Air Force and all these militaries and diplomatic channels and banking. Like for example, the bank I work for, in a regular money meeting said, "Oh yeah, we've already got sanctions on all the Chinese and Russians, all the Chinese and Russian accounts for the." I mean, I'm in the operations room of a bank. And remember, I've done the entire life cycle of a bank. So I do know what I'm talking about. I talk about this Jackson Hole thing. But ultimately, that jumps off. Eventually, the powers shift, but then it became, gangland style. So the Asians stick with the Asians. So Japan shifts his rank from being an art power to get rid of our, get our troops off the ground. They switch and become allies with China. So now you got freaking, remember, this is, the war would have kept going. Like if we didn't.
What's the title of the book?
The Clash of Civilization, Remaking World Power.
Okay,
then what happens is that sets off a tone in the United States, which causes, by this time, the Southwest, where all the big Hispanic powers, ultimately the Hispanics come to power in the United States. This is basically an alarm clock. But he goes into detail and basically says when the war finally happens and missiles finally get exchanged, nuclear exchange, he says that all the Northern Hemisphere nations are all going to be pretty much obliterated. And then the Southern Hemisphere nations, Africa, Indonesia, and places like that, ultimately, the power shifts south.
All right.
Another good book is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, great book.
It's a great business taste. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, just read The Hobbit. I mean, he gets hoodwinked into being a burglar, but basically a VC deal. Here you get 1/14th share, and the knock, and we're gonna go all the way over here to go get this jewel, but you got to go all the way back. You go there, and you come back with debt on that adventure. It's a business case study, classic. Something like Morgan Stanley would write, right? And another book I like because I'm a great fan. I love the past, present, and future. I watch a lot of Bloomberg, read the Financial Times. I'm starting to look at more local news and everything. I love historical stuff, things studying like the Peloponnesian War. I
read that.
I've read the Bible 3 times cover to cover, which is one of the greatest history books in my
I've read that.
But I also love, so that's the past, present, and future. The thing about the future, I always read science fiction, but very, very specific genre. And that the science fiction usually has to deal with, interstellar travel, humans making contact with interstellar sentient beings. Obviously, to travel to great distances, then you're also involving faster than light travel. And possibly that might involve, breaking the space-time coordinates. So that might involve time travel, but usually most time travel flicks are garbage. But there is a book that actually deals with all of them, and it's called Starfarer. Starfarer is by Paul Anderson, the late Paul Anderson. And basically these, maybe it's in the early 22nd century, probably in the late 20th and 21st century, we have some bases on the moon, and these scientists observe, because we got the Hubble down here, but imagine you've got a telescope from the moon, how much further in clarity you could see. They started seeing these signatures way off of, Alpha Centauri, some different, distant star systems. And they realized, oh shit, somehow that's people traveling faster than light, which means there is an intelligence out there that figured out freaking how to travel faster than the speed of light, which travels 186,000 miles per second squared, which means that would be like going around the Earth at the equator 25 times in 1 second. That's how fast the speed of light, which means when you pull things in light years, that's how far things are apart. So this book, so through that, they figured out freaking faster light travel. So then a few decades or however long, they actually have a crew, and it's a 5-year mission to go meet the yonder folk. So when they finally get there, they stay there for 5 years. But in the process, there's another subplot going, because then there's also the people the merchants of that time period, because of the travel.
Well, you guys read the book yourself, and then you can figure out everything he's saying.
Well, what I'm saying is
no need to. We're not asking for a book review. We're just asking for you to recommend the book.
Right.
The title.
Give us a short idea of what it's about.
So I'd recommend
so that we can read it ourselves.
I'd recommend those 3 books. Clash Civilization, Remaking the World Order by Sam Huntington. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien is a great business case study, right? So that's the past. Sam Huntington's the present, and then ultimately Starfarers, like the future. Well, they're actually
don't get me started on some of your assertions. We don't debate here, but some of this science magic about the speed of light, I'm going to ask you guys to start proving all this psychobabble, but there's another show about how far the sun is and all of this nonsense.
Read Starfarers. Just read Starfarers.
You're right. I'm just saying.
And read chapter 10 of the Clash Civilization, Remaking the World Order.
Now, Self Love, your ship, has a time machine. All right? And he's able to put you in that time machine and take you back as an adult, as you are today. And you're going to talk to 9-year-old Leandrew Wade III. What are you going to say, or what advice or what information, looking back, knowing what you know now, hindsight being, translucent, what would you say to your 9-year-old self?
What would I say?
Any advice, any words of wisdom, encouragement?
What would I say?
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're doing and believe in yourself and trust that spirit that always reveals through revelation of where to go and what steps to take. You got it. You can be that beacon of light, one of those people who can go travel to the yonder folk.
All you 9-year-olds out there, do y'all hear that? Well said. And
Project 71 is going to happen. That's what I'd say. Project 71.
Project 70. Is that anything like Project 500?
Well, I was born in 71, but it actually happens to do with the 71st level.
Okay. I'm going to have to look that up.
So getting beyond the 71st level, I've effectively achieved what some civilizations would call perhaps nirvana. Or the Nordic people would say, the halls of Valhalla, nirvana, Valhalla, right? Heaven.
We're talking with Kurt Cobain. Did Kurt Cobain achieve this too?
True paradise. Now imagine if we had this home in Jackson Hole. Have you been to Jackson Hole? That's like Hollywood on steroids. All the rich and wealthy are in Jackson Hole. Imagine if we were just out hanging out in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, well, all right, we're not going to go back to Jackson Hole again. We're not going to go down that tangent. We just heard it. All right, now, what's the meaning of life? I think this is important. Now, I think your assessment of this is as important as the homeless guy on the street, as the president of the world, as the president of the World Bank. Through your travels, because this guy travels the world, he'll just jump on a train and go across Russia. I mean, he's about it. He'll go by himself. He'll do it.
Countries.
Yeah, he'll do it. So what's the meaning of life?
It's simply to glorify God.
All right. Glorify God. Okay.
Our Creator, to glorify the Creator. And how do we glorify the Creator? And all that we do. But that doesn't give us the ability to be with the Creator because we are already part of the Creator. We are his children. So we are already in the family. If we are part of it, we know where to go home. Like the prodigal son, he knew to go home. There were probably many prodigal sons had the same situation, found themselves strung out on drugs like he was. He was just out there. But
so would you say glorify your parents? Would that be a meaning of life, to glorify your parents?
Well, you're already part of the family. That's what we term what is known as like grace. You're part of the family. You already have your inheritance, right? It's just for you to recognize it. And ultimately, we are because we have this inheritance, we are through our lives and everything that we do to tangibly have a celebration of God and living to our best, how we live, how we treat each other, like how we love each other. That's why it says, love. So if we love each other, right? If we love each other, do whatever we do, whatever, you do this, you're this, you're a teacher, you're a doctor, whatever you do. But, in this new community you've been talking about, if we just love each other, right? We are glorifying God.
I concur, but I well said, bro. I'm not going to add to it. I do have a question, a point of inquiry. What does that word mean? What do you mean when you say love each other?
To do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and equally to love thyself, to love someone like you love yourself. Most of us take it for granted, but ask somebody, if you're on your dying bed, you're sick. Look at people that are having COVID, God bless, their souls, but they're holding on for dear life. And they would if they could just have a moment to experience what it was like to just breathe unimpaired. And now they're in the situation where they're impaired, right? Well, likewise, you want to love somebody. Love thyself, like to truly love yourself for the health that you have, that you're not in that type of situation. So have that thought, treat somebody else with that same thought. Again, that just like you love yourself, because you want to really recognize how glorified you are in his image.
I see.
And you feel the same way about your fellow human being.
I see what you're saying. You're saying if I'm on my deathbed, my last second, because I got COVID right now, by the way, and if I was one of those people that was leaving here as a result of COVID, right? I'm at the very end of my rope, and that value that I see in time I spent or didn't spend with my family, things I didn't get to do, the value I start seeing in my life, that I could have that for that homeless guy that asked me for 2 pence yesterday on the street.
Right. Exactly.
That's pretty deep. That's pretty deep, bro.
Imagine a world that was led by love. Imagine that metaverse.
Yeah.
But isn't it weird that they use the word meta and then they rename themselves as meta? But meta means what? Now, talk about Big Brother's always watching. It's on it's like, one point you put an address to a region or a town. Then you put an address of people's homes, right? Like a number. It's always about a number. Then you put a number to their mobile device. Then you put a number, possibly, who knows, vaccines and stuff is putting a code that shows if you have so many of these types of, chemical levels, whatever, that signals this number. It's a specific number, right? Which you can be ultimately this massive census, right? But ultimately, it's all about being able to have information or eyes and sensors at every aspect of creation. That's why it's called a metaverse. But if we had a true love verse, a world where it's truly about this love of thyself, and ultimately of self-love, and ultimately the love of the Creator, and we're all in love with each other. I always see the number 333. I'm not going to get into that, what has been revealed through that, but 333 is a very specific number. I also see 444 as well, oftentimes. And then 1111.
It's a trinity.
This year, my birthday is 2222.
Nice.
Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the second of everything in, So it's amazing. And it's funny you got that creature because Close Encounters, if you ask me movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is my all-time
How can you talk
favorite
about
movie.
love and then call this guy
Oh my
a
gosh,
creature?
that movie used to freak. My parents took me to see it in 1977. I was 6 years old. It came out in so maybe we didn't get to see it till like early 78, but whatever. I was like 6 or 7 years old, probably 7. We lived out again. Remember, I said being tolerated out in the sticks near the railroad tracks with a forest behind us. And every time my room, everybody else's room faced another side of the house, my room was faced the back. It was all dark and everything. And every time my dad would go to the bathroom or somebody, and a light would come on in the bathroom, that window light shined up. I was frightened. I would suffocate myself. And finally, they started syndicating it on regular TV by the early 80s.
Yeah.
I finally kept watching and realized, okay, well, this is probably real. What are you gonna do about it? So like I walked from friends' houses and I always thought I was gonna be alien abducted. I would literally walk really fast. I'd look up at the sky and think, like another movie, like Fire in the Sky. You gotta watch that alien abduction thing. It's scary. Anyway, it frightened the crap out of me. And you got this thing as your background right now.
Now, I asked you if we ever walked on the moon. What did you say?
Yes. Not you and I, but people
Right.
of the human race have.
Yeah, so you believe that. Okay. All right, now look, we got a quick game, bro, real quick. It only takes 60 seconds. You've done this game before, but we always change it up. And so we give you a pair of things. I heard you mention, I think, Moses on this show. Noah, maybe you didn't. But Noah has pairs, and he was all about pairs. You know, coincidence, means two. So I'm going to give you a pair of items, and you just pick the one. It's a verbal ink blocks test, and you just pick the one that, you know, you feel better about. The idea is to not think about it, is just let it flow. So here we go. Let me start the timer over. Obama, Barack Obama, Larry Hoover.
All is one.
Huh?
All is one.
Pick Obama or Larry Hoover. You're choosing between these two.
Oh.
Barack Obama or Larry Hoover.
That's a tough one. I'd say Larry Hoover, but probably Barack Obama.
Louis Farrakhan or Minister T.D. Jakes?
You know, the previous question, I take Larry Hoover. The second one, I take Farrakhan.
Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan?
That's a tough one too. Probably Muhammad Ali.
Prince or Michael Jackson?
Believe it or not, which is why he's probably not here, Michael Jackson. Absolutely.
The NAACP or the Black Panther Party?
Black Panther Party.
Defund the police or refund the police?
Defund the police.
What was that?
Defund. My uncle is Charles Ramsey.
All right. If you had to choose, anarchy or tyranny?
Tyranny.
Eminem or Tupac?
Look, I don't like either.
You could pass.
Pass.
O.J. Simpson, you only get 2 passes. O.J. Simpson or Kyle Rittenhouse?
I don't know either. I mean, I know who's Kyle Rittenhouse? Basketball player?
No, he's the guy who shot the people at the protest. He was going down to Wisconsin to protect property. I think he was 18 years old.
Okay.
Shot him up with his AR-15.
Right.
He was afraid. He was afraid. He had his AR-15, but he was afraid of it. Yeah.
Right.
So O.J. Simpson or Kyle Rittenhouse?
O.J. Simpson.
All right, here we go. Listen up. Pookie, the purse snatching, pill popping thug, or the oath breaking police?
The thug.
Elon Musk or Fed Chair Jerome Powell?
Musk. I just bought a Tesla.
Last question. Nice. It's my dream car. It's coming. Christopher Columbus.
Did everything on the phone. That's why I know Tesla and Apple are going to merge together.
Christopher Columbus or Thomas Jefferson?
Oh. I was at, for my birthday, they freaking took me to, I wanted to see the subway in Santo Domingo, right? The biggest in like the whole region.
Christopher Columbus or Thomas Jefferson?
Columbus's hacienda. I don't want to see that freaking clown, so I'll take that other dude.
Thomas Jefferson.
I mean,
all right.
he was
Thomas
conflicted.
Jefferson. All right. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of the game.
Well, he was in a different era. He was in the Enlightenment period. Columbus was like brute terrorist.
Yeah. I think I was quoting Thomas Jefferson, and I'm one of these guys I tend to separate the message from the messenger. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner, and I'm not bumping for Thomas Jefferson by any
Well, Columbus
stretch.
came over and literally within a 10-year decade had come in, invaded, killed, and enslaved whole swaths of population of certain areas. Everywhere they went. That's just foul. Talk about anti-love. They did it in the spirit of hate.
I mean,
that's what a world of hate looks like. So
as
that
opposed to a world
anarchy.
of love.
Love, we always call tyranny. It's not tyranny, it's sovereignty. God is sovereign. The devil is anarchy. That's hate. Love is versus hate. Lucifer is made from hate. He was rebirthed as hate.
Well, listen, Thomas Jefferson said, and I quote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." And I'm 100% in agreement with him. Tyranny is what was happening to us during slavery. Tyranny is what was happening to the Jews, the Jewish in the Holocaust, and you had a madman throwing people in ovens because he didn't like them.
Right.
Tyranny, so when I ask the question, tyranny or anarchy, that's basically what I'm asking. So anarchy would be NFTs with no regulation in my mind. Tyranny would be the government regulating everything, just in my mind. You know what I'm saying? But of course, I haven't given myself this test. I just wax poetic and ask the question. So, Noop, anything that we haven't covered, though, that you feel is necessary to cover? Any topic that we talked about today? Anything that you want to touch on that maybe I cut you off or you didn't get a chance to touch on it? Now is the time, good brother.
No, this was a great opportunity. Currently I'm in a role where I'm now learning end-to-end push and pull rails of basically the very essence of the financial system, from being I started off as a financial engineer, right, to being ultimately or working with financial engineering tools, to now working with software engineering, which is, software eats everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm now working, I'm on as a product manager, but I'm working for, the other side of the back. I saw the front office of a bank to now the back end operations.
So you've been on the fin side, now you're moving to the tech.
And I've operated my own companies. So I know how to put companies together. Multinational company, I've done cross-border transactions. But I now, with this great leap, there's going to be a massive wealth transfer in this decade. I mean, it's already been announced. I mean, Ford, for example, the most popular car is a Ford F-150, right? They have now announced that they're coming out with an electric car. Well, of course, Barry Barrow, the CEO of GM, comes on and says, well, we're coming out with ours as well. And Ford says, we're going to be the number 2 player in the EV or electric vehicle market, which is why I put together a theme. I have a whole investment thesis just around the EV market, because ultimately the pathway towards this new energy source is going to power the mega cities of the within 60, 70 years, which are going to be places like Africa. All those markets are being electric. I mean, all they got to do is watch Tesla, where Tesla, he started off with, again, this is the thesis, where he started with powering, what is the power? What, in the old world, right, the physical world, it was oil. Oil was energy, but it was also, backed by the banks, right? And those physical banks had gold. So it was gold and oil, right? And you could say drugs. I mean, it's kind of like, the game thing, right? GD,
Drugs, sugar, salt, the killers.
right, up and down Fifth Avenue, it's the Royal Dutch Shell, the Dutch East India, British West, all those companies, right?
East Indian Tea Company, yeah.
Right. But now you have a world where ultimately the power source is what is the virtual world, which is led by AI? What does AI need? It needs us. We're the import. It needs data. Data is the new gold, right? Well, what is the virtual gold counterpart, right? Which is what powers any bank. Bank has to have gold in the vault. Ultimately, people have to trust that there's gold. That was the backing, or at least there was some commerce behind it. Well, the commerce, which has been liquidated into a nice certificate or a bar of gold. Well, likewise, in the virtual world, that counterpart is Bitcoin.
Mm.
And Bitcoin, I'm saying, is what's going to be a lowercase b, because actually Bitcoin has put together the basic highway system architecture. But now it's ultimately you need to have. It's not just building the railroads. You need to have, coming up with for example, refrigerated freight trains. I mean, you could build a whole new industries by being able to transport, commodities and cattle all the way to the East Coast that have been butchered and processed all in a central location and shipped in refrigerated trucking. I mean, you could transform an entire industry. Well, likewise, that packaging or those freight train containers, right, which is what powered in the physical world, is going to be things what we call the smart contract. Well, Ethereum and others have built these systems. You now hear the term like layer 2. Ultimately, they're going to be the containers of information, because all these websites are all going to be decentralized and they're all going to be on the blockchain, right? All content, all information will travel this new internet, so to speak, or new highway system, right? And so likewise, that energy source, I think it's going to be leaps, but ultimately, like if you look at commodities like Ethereum, or even lithium with electric cars, I say that if you want to see, if you look at what power, the fact that everything's going electric, first with cars, if you look at what Tesla did, then first he created a banking system, that was PayPal. Then you got cars, which is Tesla, right? That's energy, so a new energy system for powering banking, PayPal. Then you got an energy system that powers transportation, right, which is moving of people, which is like Tesla. Then you got it's going to ultimately be like homes. That's what Solar City is all about, powering homes. Eventually, every home is going to have a battery, right? You got solar power,
Tesla battery. Yeah.
And then you got SpaceX, because it's about getting there, right? And the power systems that's going to get us there. It's all about basic power, right? So likewise, you can start to look at some of these new banking system behind that, particularly DeFi or decentralized finance entities. But ultimately, that's if I could lead one thought, that's where things are going. So you could look at take the EV, the growth of the EV market, which is going to be accelerated, because GM already announced by 2035 all cars and light trucks will be electric. And by the fact that they're now going with the pickup truck market first and saying, and they're all the EV war is right now, the battlefield, the trenches is the pickup truck, because you get the pickup truck, you get average Joe. Now you got mainstream America. All the people that are going to be celebrating tomorrow, January 6th. And they now are confident to get an electric car. And the war, the actual feature set that they're battling on is based on range. So I think Ford just announced theirs is going to be, not Ford, GM's, which is going to come out next year. It's going to be 400-mile range. That's unheard of, and still have the same power torque. So basically that's going to be playing through there. That's in 15 years. Well, likewise, you could say you can invest in parallel with all these things like virtual currencies of this new banking system that's coming on this pathway, step by step. You can start taking, in other words, escalate physical assets, things back to the physical world, and start investing more in the virtual world.
Well, we've moved beyond peak oil. I told you that some years ago. So, we have less than half the world's oil supplies left.
Remember the price of oil collapsed in the middle of the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, because all the models showed up, demand's just gone away. Literally, oil went negative. The price of oil, how can oil go negative? It's still
and the money though is going to also be, as it always is, in defense systems. So, how can we protect ourselves if we don't have the gas and the oils to move these tanks and these jets? So, what you're talking about, the electricity, but then now we need these chips. These aren't infinite resources. And that's another reason why he's up in space, because they want to find, the raw materials for these chips we need for all these batteries and stuff.
Right.
You know, it's a what do you call it? It's an abyss, bro. When you look at it all, the more we do as humanity to fix problems, you know, I think the Arabs say, you know, my grandfather drove a camel, my father drove a Mercedes, I drive a jet, but then they say my grandkid will ride a camel.
Right. That's a very ancient. That's like a proverb.
Yeah. Yeah. So Self Love, you got anything? And then Drew, give your big ups after Self Love. You got any shout outs, big ups? I'm gonna throw it to you, Self, first.
It's been expansive.
Facts.
Appreciate you being here, Ship. And yo to the noobs. And
yeah.
Keep
Ask
expanding.
JB about the summary that I put together. That's the tangible goal is Jackson Hole. We got to get a fixer upper in Jackson Hole, get the banking license. We got beta exchange. Financial
Greater beta
exchange. Exactly.
That's too long for a
beta might be taken. So
well, that should be the name,
especially after you're announcing it on here. So you know what I mean.
A brand will be beta. We'll just be beta. The beta coin.
Hey, go ahead with your big ups, your shout outs, good Noop, and then we can wrap this thing up, brother.
Well, yo, first and foremost, the Lord Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And to all my ships, you know, happy anniversary. It's great being part of this illustrious noble clan. Just great to be here. I mean, if you can see my view, I'm looking at Grant Park. I see the skyscrapers.
Nice.
My shippy dropped me off over here. He knows where I'm at. It's beautiful right here in the heart of one of the greatest cities, you know, in the world.
Facts. Founded by a black man.
Right. Well, there are already black people here. I mean, they're all the
man. I didn't know Brooklyn was founded by a brother. But go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
But anyway, just shouts out to everybody, all the ancestors, all the future, past, present, and future. Love y'all.
Hey.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure.
And yo, good Noop. We don't kick anybody out. We definitely don't kick beta Noops out, and we definitely don't kick my purse out. So show yourself the door. And this show is your show. You're always welcome, brother. We appreciate you.
All right, yo.
Yo. Yeah, Donnie C said, interesting show. I would definitely concur, man. I would definitely concur with that.
Facts.
Man. And thanks for your support, Donnie C. Yeah, it was a major gem factory. You know, he's the type of guest we probably should have broke it down into 2 shows, you know. You know what I mean? Because he's a wonderland of information. I remember, boy, we was pledging he's to come up there and talk to us. Y'all be having a party or something, just trying to raise money, you know what I mean, to pay this and pay that. And boy, I'd be like, man, ain't it a house full of women out there? I show him. He'd be talking to us about Bitcoin and NFTs. Oh man, but man, yes. Oh man, fantastic. So the riddle, Self, let me jump to the riddle. I think you gave an immediate thumbs up. The dome teaser is: the more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?
Footsteps.
Facts. That is correct. Ding, ding, ding. Self Love the Riddler has solved yet again another riddle. And, you know, don't sell yourself short just because you've heard him and retained it. You know, that's part of the, it's how you accumulate knowledge.
Hey, I don't, hey, just saying. I have a whole bunch of facts in here that just come when they come. You know it. Be like, damn, I'll say something right out with blah, 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 blah. Like, wow. How the hell did I even know that?
Yeah. You do tend to retain. You seem to retain all the information I don't, which works. And vice versa. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
All right, so we got next week. We have White Massacre. So that's our show. We're starting a series on white terror, if you will. This brother mentioned Black Wall Street, but you know as well as I know that's just the one they like to talk about to kind of make you not think that it happened in Chicago, it happened in Brooklyn.
60 instances where we were doing our thing, didn't have nothing, y'all, wasn't bothering y'all, nothing, and
wasn't asking for welfare, didn't need handouts.
Nothing. Doing better than them. That was the whole problem.
That was the whole issue. Yep. And vibrating love and recycling our money. Well, we're starting a series, and the first one, it actually started in New York. So that's the one we're doing starting next week. So self-love, and I eventually, God willing, will get around to, all of them. We're doing it, from a time frame, the oldest to the most current day. And we're going to unpack this white terror, if you will, because they like to say the Black P. Stones were the first terrorists, and I'd like to say the KKK were.
Pink terror. I would probably.
You're right. You're right. We're going to adjust that. Yeah, Pink Massacre. You're right. Pink terror. I agree.
Yeah. I
agree. Good point. And then the following week, we have a PhD coming in the building, but we'll talk about that as we get closer to that. But we're going to, continue our Black mental health. Yeah.
Facts.
Series, because there's a lot of healing that we need to have done within our communities. No.
Absolutely. Within ourselves. I mean, it's in our DNA. Like most of us foundational people, Aborigines of this North America, have trauma because we've been forced off our land and stripped of everything, changed our designation, and made us something that we're not. And we have to get it back. Gotta know what we are and who we are.
Correct. That's what I was going to say. That's going to come from knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and telling these stories and peeling back the history and then challenging each other to do more research, and gets to the point where you have to sit your children down and make them listen. We get off into, they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen. All they want to do is play video games. Well, who bought them the video games, and who's parenting who around this MF?
I just say theta. That's what I say, theta. The first 7 years, that's when you got to be,
I say until they get out of your house. Sit down and listen to what I'm saying. And if you don't like it, start paying some bills around here, because, certain things you don't have a choice in the matter. We send our kids off and have them listen to the white people and the pink people, and we make them sit down and do those studies. But we don't sit down and give them our stories. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. I'm saying theta, and I got those stories, and you did, and we just got to make sure that ours get that.
Correct. All of us. Correct. This isn't judgment.
And make sure that they get theirs that, because it needs to go on and on and on. That's why we're here at the Self Luv Show, or putting things out here. It should go into perpetuity.
Correct. I mean, we have people new to this country who don't know any of the history, and they say things like, Black people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And, if you don't know your history, that, hey, we had all that, we did all that, they blew it up, they stole it, and they gave it to you.
Facts.
If we're not able to drop facts like that as a nation of people, then we're just jello out here. Knowledge is power, and if we don't love our little ones enough to force feed this information down their throats, what are we doing? We can sit down and break down a football game to them and what a first down is and what traveling is on the basketball court. You know what I mean? So that's called parenting, people. That all being said, y'all join us tomorrow. we're doing our part 2 on CTE and self. You know, there's a term called race norming.
Race norming.
The KKK. I mean, the National Football League. You know, when they had the settlement, another trick bag for the CTE. You know the demographics of how many black players.
Yes.
Yeah. So they
less likely if you're to have CTE if you have this melanin because
yes. You're
more powerful. I don't know. That ain't what they was trying to present, but
Yeah, no, and that's what we're breaking down. Yeah, they were saying that basically what they're saying is that self, if they did your cognitive test after you retired, yours has to be done on a lower scale because you're black.
And
you don't know as much as the white football players.
It was less from beginning.
Correct.
Yeah, it was always, that's why they couldn't play quarterback because they couldn't,
And it doesn't matter if you were Russell Wilson or Pookie.
Crap.
Right.
Al Campanis.
Yes, they're still running that, self. And they were telling private doctors to follow that. You know what I mean? So,
yes.
Yeah.
The team doctors definitely was under that.
Oh, yeah.
Under that act.
So then you go get your own private doctor.
And they still be under that act.
Yeah, the league will send them a letter like, unless you're using the race norming scale. So that's what we're breaking down tomorrow. And self, the doctors are like, this is racist. Race norming is the term. So enough of my yapping. I'm going to turn it over to my personal favorite part of the whole shebang, and that's this brother Wordsmith's final words. Out.
I want to start off by saying yo to the founders. Y'all build an institution that I could be proud of. Lives through me. 9 and my ship Drew. And I don't want it to be misconstrued. Because I have a dream and it might seem extreme. Might think I'm a fiend. But I'm going to tell you what I mean. I need to feed my people. Self-love. Because there is no equal. We have built the platforms of this matrix. Fintech, however you want to make it. Wall Street, Black Street. Everywhere in between has been complete. We planted all the seeds, have yet been able to reap. But the time is now. The blockchain is probably the way how. The crypto can flip your whole life. But you gotta use awareness and be precise. There are potholes in life. Get your steering all good, you be all right. is love, honor, respect, and how we rebuild our community. Keep it real. We are the Aboriginal, the indigenous to this land. I need all of y'all to understand that the treaties signed from most of our tribes was never kept. And the truth is, they try to hide the fact that we were already here, and they changed our designation. All tribes wasn't part of that small parks situation. Check it for yourself. Look at what they call the census. Look how everything has been rearranged. To change our claim on this land. Our blood has claimed it for ourselves because we've been here before any of this. Words.
That was off the top. That was off the rip, y'all. This is Drizzy performing Kanye's 24. Big ups. Bullets
Big
of boomerangs.
Stand your ground.
Hey, y'all, murder, that's suicide.
Yeah. An eye for an eye.
Facts, flesh. Silence is violence, bro.
You see something, say something.
12, squally. Hey, I'm gonna show y'all how to give you some slave theory. This is how you enslave a man. You take his greed, you add his ego, you mix in his fear, and then you got yourself a slave.
Facts. Charity plus humility times love is freedom.
That's the freedom theory. That's how you free that slave. Do not, under any circumstances, for any reason, no matter what the government's telling you, because they can lie to you, you can't lie back. Do not answer questions.
Question everything.
Because fear is cap.
Man, that's why we vibrate love.
You hear that, Drew? Love, forgiveness, and charity. Those are the highest love vibrations.
So do something charitable for an enemy and end the beef.
Take Mayor Larry Light Blunt, what they roll the blunts in now, so if they don't use swishers, what they be using? They burn slow.
Man.
Take forever to roll them.
Man, yeah.
They be sitting there through the whole 2-hour interview rolling the blunt, backwoods or something.
Yes, backwoods.
Yeah, take Mayor Larry Light Blunt of backwood and take 12 some donuts.
Honey backwood.
Yeah, honey backwood. Take 12 some donuts, some honey donuts, and you know what I'm saying? So like that's what he's saying. You know, do something charitable for your ops. But let me get off that. Hurt people, bro.
Healthy people, heal people.
Heal that people, healthy people. Free the old man, free granddad, free Larry Hoover.
Free Chief Malik, Jeff Ford.
Man. Man, get that angel up out of there. Free all the guys, man.
Prison is slavery.
Y'all could be like St. Pedro, though. Keep your eyes on Yahshua. And you could walk on H2O.
Facts. Let's just move mountains.
Move mountains?
Yeah.
Bro, I can't move mountains. I can't even push my car.
Bro, all you need is the faith of a mustard seed. And we got way more than that.
Mustard seed, huh?
Yes, sir.
Happy founders to all my noobs.